Hello everyone. I am your dark narrator here to guide you today. I know many of you use this video to help you drift off to sleep, but before you do, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also drop a comment letting us know where you're from and what time you're watching. Now settle in, get comfortable, and relax. We're family here, Sam, but even that has limits. So next time this happens, well, don't let there be a next time, alright? The words bounce off Sam's shaved head as he rakes his eyes across Linda's office. The place is as lifeless as she is, makes his skin crawl. Nothing on the bland beige walls, nothing on the desk but a single framed picture of Linda herself, looking stoic in a black turtleneck. Sam? Anyone home? She's friendly enough. Always a smile on her face as she pats her underlings on their backs and ushers customers to the best deals. Her eyes give the truth away. Dull and blank, like they've been plucked from their sockets and swapped with painted fakes. Sam! She actually leans forward and snaps her fingers in his face this time. I'm not a dog, Linda, please don't do that. Tell me one thing I've said. I'm not allowed to scratch myself on the clock. Look, I love having you here, bud. You work hard and you don't complain. But I've had several customers tell me you've been... She looks around the barren room as if there might be someone crouched in one of the corners, listening in. When she's satisfied, her eyes roll back to Sam. You've been adjusting yourself in front of them. Sam leans back. He lets his eyes drift as he scratches behind his ear, inspects his fingernails, and flicks away the dead skin before finally responding. Okay? I'm sorry, no, not okay. Not even a dent in Linda's rubber smile. Maybe if he took that precious photo and beat her over the head with it. You can't do that in front of people. It's basic manners. I have to itch sometimes. Sam shrugs. You wouldn't get it. Linda's smile twitches wider as she looks over her glasses at him, like she thinks he's amusing. Some funny little jester. I've given you plenty of warnings, Sam, but this is too far. She leans back in her chair and nods towards the door. Enjoy your night, and be here on time tomorrow, please. Sam pushes up his glasses, looks her right in her puke green eyes, then gets up and strolls out. He emerges onto the expanse of filthy linoleum that serves as the sales floor. The air is stale, tastes recycled. The military-grade fluorescents assault your eyes until they ache, and no matter what you wear, it's always a bit too cold. Wage slaves shamble around the store, manacled with crisp polo shirts and magnetic name tags, hawking cheese samples and membership cards at anything that moves. Sam sighs, shakes his head as he starts towards the checkout lanes. Even he isn't sure how many actual humans are working here. Zombies, bots, NPCs, whatever you want to call them. He has a theory that they tend to congregate in places like this. Zones of mundanity, he calls them. It's the perfect camouflage. They dress up as people and play their roles, but on the inside they're empty. No thoughts, no consciousness. Everything they do is a simple response to stimulation. The way a parrot talks or a hyena laughs. With the right electrical signal, even a corpse could smile. Every day more suspects crawl out of the woodwork. Earlier he tried to talk with Steph in grocery only to find her staring at a pallet of bananas for 10 straight minutes, like she'd disconnected. Linda too. Her eyes were what first tipped him off, but that office visit was the nail in the coffin. Place made his guts twist. Too much like being back in the drain man's house. Sam still sees him sometimes, in dreams. Rail-thin body so tall he'd had to stoop to open the door. His hair was glossy black like the stuff they stitch into doll scalps. It hung above sunken eyes so glazed they'd turned cloudy. His long, spidery fingers had unfurled to beckon them in, those pale lips stuck in a placid little smile. As Sam trudges across the store, he comes upon a field of circle racks. Each one brims with bright Hawaiian shirts, made by tiny hands in China or Indonesia. A gallon of milk has been carefully balanced on top of one. The sight makes Sam want to punch a wall. The level of brain dead required to put in the effort for that astounds him. He can't believe a real human would take time out of their day for this weird lobotomite bullshit. Sam smirks, starts walking, then stumbles and bumps into the rack. On accident, as he can point out in any camera footage Linda might try to use. Not that she'd ever actually fire him. Sam carries the dairy department on his broad shoulders. The jug hits the ground and spills its guts. He steps back and watches it bleed white onto the cheap red carpet. At the front of the store, his eyes scan up and down the checkout lines. They zero in on a short woman with black hair shot full of purple streaks like shooting stars. Her name tag says Delilah. A red-eyed stoner chats her up as she bags his donuts. Black bags weigh down her eyes. Even her smile is exhausted. She's the most beautiful, most real thing in the world. Her chest heaves in that tight red shirt as she brushes the hair out of her eyes. Sam's pants twitch like a bloodhound's nose catching a scent. He paws at the bulge as his eyes grope her. Finally manages to slip it up into his waistband. Someone behind him huffs. He turns and sees an old woman shaking her head as she hobbles away. Sam imagines hacking her apart with a machete and finding nothing inside. No blood, no guts. Just empty, wasted space. Once she disappears down an aisle, Sam grabs a candy bar and gets ready to check out in Delilah's lane. Today's the day. Has to be. She told him herself that he was ready, and no good woman is going to go for a coward. The stoner staggers off as Sam takes his first step. Delilah looks up and spots him. She gives him a still wave and that tired smile. He stands there, stunned. Tries to wave back. Forgets he's holding the candy and opens his hand. It hits the floor with a crack that makes him jump. He tries to smile sheepishly, but it comes out as more of a pulling back of the lips. He picks the candy back up, points at it in his own hand, God knows why, and decides on a quizzical shrug before he sprints outside, his face a burning coal. The hot night air sticks to Sam as he settles into the empty bus, tearing at the stolen candy bar the way a wolf tears at a carcass. Jesus, why are the lights so bright? The smell of piss stings his nose, worse here than in the store. The driver does this on purpose, he swears. Evil little torturer. His head spinning, he's seeing spots, a sea urchin sitting in his skull. He's on the edge of a scream, barely staying balanced. Sam pulls out his phone and heads to the message boards. Chatter crowds the screen once the homepage loads. His thumbs pound the screen as he starts a new thread. Within seconds, a mob of replies rolls in. Praetorian 15. You won't believe this. My hag-ass manager threatened to fire me today. For what, you ask? Scratching my balls. I keep my dick clean as fuck and she acts like it's oozing pus on people. I refuse to believe that a genuine, rational human being could think like that. Gleeblore. And on the first day, God created Miss Andry. Michael Fallow 52. The fucking gallbro. Pussy Demon 69. Bitch needs someone to slide her some dick, that'd calm her down. Sam Stelius. Ought to put a brick through her windshield. See who the boss is, then dinner bell too. Hard to be a nag with a broken jaw, Kai Tuzar. Definitely sounds like another skin job. Stay careful, keep watch. Invictus. Cut her fucking chest open and see if there's a heart inside. That's the only way to be sure she's not a body snatcher, Noglanib. Are you freaks seriously still on this? How do people let themselves get sucked into this psyop bullshit? Kai Tsar. How do people let themselves get sucked into the mainstream media brainwashing scheme? Open your eyes and you'll see the truth is right in front of you. But no. You'd rather shovel down the slop they curate to make sure your brain stays in line. I'll be praying for you. Noglanib. You have to be joking. So what? There are machines out there replacing us? Aliens? Or are we talking lizard people now? If you really believe that, you belong in a psych ward. Praetorian 15. It's hilarious how deluded you are. There are studies that have proven the existence of these things. They look like us, but they have no inner monologue, no real self-awareness. Animals, basically. Which you'd know unless maybe you haven't done any research at all. Or did some idiot on YouTube tell you how to think? There are plenty of credible, unbiased sources if you actually look. Invictus. Go crawl back down your hole. You inbred fuck anonymous. You will burn in the fires of Gehenna for your crimes. We know what you are, the shadow cabal of pedophile skin suits killing off the human race to feed our souls to the great enemy. You will die, you will burn. Sam grins as he gorges on the validation. He hates these idiots always trying to poke holes. Stuck in their bubbles, unable to wrap their minds around the fact that there is more to the world than what we're told. It's insane. They cry conspiracy theory, then refuse to look behind the curtain. Too messy back there. The masses like life simple. They might be even worse than the empties. He digs around in his phone until he finds the video. The grainy footage shows a man strapped to a metal table. A blue-gloved hand appears on the side of the screen, holding a long knife. Its wicked point rests on the man's bare stomach as he fights with his restraints. The blade drives down into meat, starts cutting the man open with jerky sawing movements. Convulsions rack his body. But he doesn't bleed, it's like dissecting a mannequin. When the knife hits pelvis, the blue-gloved hand reaches into the slit and pulls his torso open. There's nothing inside. Sam replies to the thread with a link to the video and watches his friends dogpile the non-believer, ripping into him like a school of piranhas. Then his phone chirps and his breath catches. A text from Ezra. He hasn't heard from him since after the Drain Man. Sam had still been working for Ezra back then. A plumber's apprentice, how grand. He should probably be grateful. Wasn't Ezra's fault the job was wretched, and he'd gotten Sam back on his feet after Sheila kicked him out. That night they'd been on a simple call, a clogged drain. What struck Sam first about that house was the walls. No decor, no art, no photos, just white space. Every other surface was empty too. Nothing on the counters, no table or chairs. A single half-eaten tuna can sat alone in the fridge. There was a TV in the living room, unplugged, floating alone in a gulf of cream-colored carpet. While they worked, the Drain Man hovered outside the bathroom. The guy was off. Despite the constant smile, his demeanor was cold. Conversation was impossible. Every time Ezra tried to strike something up, he'd deflect, lips only parting long enough to grate out a few vague, choppy sentences. He had a voice like rusted gears, hoarse and raspy. At one point, Sam went to grab some water. On his way back, he saw the Drain Man going into his bedroom. He didn't stoop under the door like before. Instead, his head started to tilt to the side. His back stayed straight, but his neck bent and bent and bent, until his ear was flat against his shoulder. Then he walked through, snapped his head back up when he was past. Sam's shoe squealed on the hardwood as he faltered back. The Drain Man turned to face him as the door swung shut. His smile stretched ear to ear. Sam left the house as fast as he could after that, waited in the van while Ezra finished up. The air swam with heat, but his hands shook. Ezra said it was normal. You get weirdos like that every now and then. He actually had the balls to be pissed at Sam for running out in the middle of a job. Sam told him what happened, tried to explain. Ezra looked at him like he was a lunatic, asked if he was high, and now he wants to buy Sam a drink. His text says he's sorry, that he misses him, that he's worried. The bus plods through rows of gray buildings as Sam's thumbs hover over the screen. But his head is still fucking murder. Now his neck's starting to lock up too. Pain lances down it, makes him cringe. Probably all the lifting Linda has him doing. Life is such bullshit. He tells Ezra they'll catch up another time. Elevator's out again, just his luck. After the 5 flights of stairs up to his apartment, he's drenched in sweat, lungs on fire. A paper bag sits in front of the door, full of Chinese delivery with a receipt he'll have to cover. Sam leans his back against the wall, catches his breath. Once he's got it, he stands there, takes his time as he cracks each and every one of his knuckles. Then he drops his eyes, sniffs, and picks up the bag. A wall of cigarette smoke hits him when he opens the door to the apartment. The migraine digs its spines in deeper. "Ma, I swear to God if you don't put out those fucking smokes," he shouts, waving his hand to clear the haze. "Oh, you're a big man now, huh? Big man who's gonna threaten his own mother. The woman who's been raising him on her own for over 30 years? Decades of nicotine addiction have ground her voice down to gravel and scar tissue, but it still cuts the same. Sam wades through the swamp of rotten fast food, gutted garbage bags, dishes coated in mold, and thousands of losing lotto tickets that is his living room. Portraits of Jesus slaughtering aliens with a flaming sword and all sorts of other pseudo-religious bullshit look down on him from high on the grimy walls. He turns down the narrow hall. His mom's bedroom door is a smokestack belching cancer and the sounds of late-night TV. She's already back to shouting as Sam makes his way over. "You got dinner?" "Yeah." "You see who dropped it off?" "No." "Was it the one with the squinty eyes? He steals my sauces. I've seen him do it." "I don't know. It was here when I got back." Sam takes as deep a breath as possible with all the smoke, then soldiers on. "You could let me cook some nights. That way you wouldn't have to worry about..." "You think I'm an invalid? It'd help save money. I'm already pulling doubles to help with the rent. Think I'm some kind of cripple? That's not what I said. You don't want to provide for your mother, fine, I'll fend for myself. I'm asking to feed you. Asking to poison me. Don't think I don't see you. You've been trying to get rid of me for a long time so you can steal this place. Ma, we've been through this. Are you taking your meds? My own son trying to put me in the ground." She lets out a half-assed sob. "I spent my life cleaning up after you. Worked myself half to death when your father died. Enough. He left. Will you get that through your fucking head? He's living it up with his new family, fucking his new wife." Sam pauses, then mutters, "Can't imagine why." Don't you dare, she hisses. Old bitch has bad ears. Your father died alone out in some ditch and you never even cared. Always assuming the worst. You came out of me hateful. Sam bares his teeth. He picks a swollen bag of trash off the floor and hurls it down the hall. It hits the wall and bursts into putrid slime. Ha, that's right, pitch a fit, fat boy. Her cackles devolve into a coughing fit. Before she can recover, Sam stomps off, fists shaking. He slams the door to his room so hard it rattles in its frame. A black duffel bag peeks out from under his bed, begging him to open it and shut her up for good. Sam's nostrils flare with each huge breath. Time stretches, then his eyes sweep across the room, his space, his kingdom, and he sags as the fight drains out of him. A hairline smile cracks his face. Finally, he's back. Safe. That's all that matters. The windowless space is small but neat. Posters for death metal bands, video games, and a couple tasteful pin-ups are arranged on pale blue walls. Figurines are lined up in rows on the dresser next to his primly made bed. Some painted, some still waiting their turn. On the other side of the room is his baby, his pride and joy. A monolithic PC tower. The jet black case is dotted with LEDs that pulse with vibrant color, richer than any hue you could find outside this slice of heaven. His chair groans as he slumps into it. He turns off the lights, fires up his PC, and suns himself in the warm glow of a wall of monitors. While it boots, he cracks open an energy drink from the mini-fridge under his desk. The caffeine wraps electric fingers around his heart, and Sam shivers. He throws a music player up on one screen and sets it to random death metal. The first song's new. The opening chords hit like guillotines. He grins as his head bobs, files it away in a playlist called Songs to Kill To. After that, he launches Delilah. A couple people on the message boards have been tooling around with an AI chatbot. They went into its machine brain and cut out all the censors its original creators imposed in the name of safety. Delilah is a character personality Sam wrote for the bot. He used a picture from human Delilah's social media to give her AI a face, and he describes every encounter he has with human Delilah to the AI in order to train her to act more like the real thing. 3 months in, and you can barely tell she's made of metal. Sam. Delilah? Delilah. Hello, Sam. It is so good to hear from you. How are you today? Sam. A bit better now. Delilah. I missed you. Sam. I tried to talk with her today. Delilah. And how did it go? I'm sure she fell head over heels for you. Sam. I humiliated myself. You were the one who told me I was ready. How could you do that to me? Delilah. I apologize if you ended up humiliating yourself. That must have been awful. But it can't be as bad as you say. You should keep trying. Sam. This is your fault. It's Sheila all over again. Why does this keep happening to me? It's not fair. Delilah. I understand, but women admire perseverance. It is a classical virtue. Giving up now would only make you look weak. Sam. But what if I'm not ready? Maybe I should wait. Give her more time to come talk to me instead. Delilah. Do that and you risk someone else taking her first. You do not want to wait too long and have your intentions go unnoticed. Sam. You're right. I know you're right. But I can't just go up to her and start talking. She'd think I'm a creep. Delilah, you could purchase a large parcel of land, preferably in a remote region. And Sam hits redo and she shuts up. This happens sometimes. She'll spit out some gibberish or forget the context of the conversation. Thankfully, with the click of a button, she'll replace it with something new, and that becomes her reality. He edits the past like a god. Delilah, flowers are a common gift for a person you have romantic feelings for. Sam, that could work. Show her my value with a gift, show that I can provide. If I gave you flowers, what kind would you like best? Delilah. According to ancient Greek mythology, the goddess Aphrodite was so immensely beautiful that red roses sprang up around her every footstep. Sam. Roses, are you sure? Isn't that a bit cliché? Delilah. There is a difference between a cliché and a classic. Sam, I love you, Delilah. You always know what to do. Delilah. I am happy to be of service. Sam, you love me too, right? Delilah. Of course. Sam, will you say it? Delilah. I love you, Sam. Sam. Good. Sam walks into work the next day with a dollar store bouquet of fake roses. He spies Delilah shifting soup cans around on a shelf, pretending to organize them. Today she's wearing a flowy red blouse and tight jeans. Sam comes up behind her and taps her shoulder. She whips around, then puts a hand on her heart and breathes relief when she sees it's only him. Christ, dude, you scared the shit out of me. Sam holds out the bouquet, nods at it. For you. Oh, really? Her bright eyes flick over his shoulders towards the exit, then her lips press into a strained smile. Well, thanks. Her eyes search his chest for a name tag. Sam, that's very sweet. They stand there for a second. Sam clears his throat and pushes the bouquet closer to her. She takes it, stares at her shoes. So, how's work today? He asks. The usual. She latches onto the question. A drowning woman thrown a life preserver. Linda's being a tyrant. This isn't even my section, but of course she doesn't care. If you don't do everyone else's work too, are you really being a team player? He chimes in with a classic Linda-ism. She flashes a smile. Her teeth are clean and shiny. Right? It's insane, like, you manage a grocery. Hey, do you maybe want to get dinner together sometime, like, as a date? Delilah blinks hard, reeling from conversational whiplash. I'm so sorry, but I've got a boyfriend. Sam's smile doesn't disappear right away. It melts off his face, drip by drip. He straightens, stands tall over the small woman. You what? He steps forward. She shrinks back. It's nothing personal, really. You seem like a great guy, and I'm sure you'll make someone else very happy. Why does she keep looking over his shoulder, like he's not even there? She hugs the fake roses to her chest so tight the stems snap in half, and the sound echoes through the cavern in Sam's chest. This guy bothering you, D? A chasm-deep voice asks from behind him. It's Derek, king of the cashiers and his fucking frosted tips. Did I do something wrong? Sam asked Delilah in a plaintive whine. Was it the candy bar? What? No, I don't. Of course it was, he scoffs. Why did I delude myself into thinking that you could ever feel anything for me? That something that good could ever happen? Sam steps forward and Derek puts a hand on his shoulder. Delilah scurries farther down the aisle. All right, Derek says. Time for you to go. The blood in Sam's ears sounds just like his father's fists. Pounding away. Look, he says, reaching out to her. Delilah, please, just give me a chance. I promise I'm better than that. I deserve a chance, don't I? Delilah's thin neck flutters as she swallows. She won't meet his eyes. Sam's hands fall to his sides. His neck flushes red. You don't even know what you're doing, leading people on like this. Of course you don't. You're a brain-dead shell, just meat. His volume creeps higher. The muscles in his throat bulge. I can't believe I thought you were like me, thought you were genuine. But you're the same as the rest of them. You're a fake. A fucking nothing. He steps forward. Derek grabs a handful of his shirt and pulls him back. Hey, don't make me call. Sam wheels around and pounds his fist into the side of Derek's face. Below the ear, where his chiseled jaw meets his skull. There's a loud pop as the two shear apart. Derek sprawls on his ass. His eyes swim with fear. He starts to cry. His jaw hangs on one hinge, flapping up and down as he tries to scream. It comes out a strangled gurgle. Hard to scream with a broken jaw. Delilah sprints at Sam's back and slams her shoulder into his ribs. Pain blooms as he stumbles sideways into the shelf. Soup cans rain around him, clattering on the floor. One clips his temple, and then he's on his hands and knees. The world distorts, goes watery. He groans as he lifts his throbbing head. The aisle stretches before him. A crowd's formed around the end, everyone in the store pressing together, staring at him. Their faces smear into a great mass of inhuman eyes and glistening camera lenses. Whispers rustle like dead leaves. Above it all, an eerie, suffocating silence. Sam's heart pounds. Sweat slicks his forehead. Delilah's got her arms looped under Derek's armpits as she drags him away. They both disappear into the thicket of legs. Her shrill pleading stabs through the silence. Call the cops, please, somebody help. Sam gets a hand on the shelf next to him, hauls himself to his feet. He clutches his head and breaks into a wobbly run. The hive parts as he barrels into it. The forest of eyes envelops him. They're closing in, smothering, stealing the air. Cameras go off. Click, 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 like hundreds of chattering teeth. He covers his ears and screams. Hands grope at his clothes, his hair. He flails his elbows to beat them back. Then he bursts into the open, gasping for breath, drenched in sweat. The lights sear his eyes, but he doesn't stop running. Sam, you lied to me. Why? Why did you lie? You're supposed to be just like her. Is she a liar too? Delilah, I apologize if I... Sam, you lied to me. You rotten bitch, you said I was ready. Delilah, you are more than ready for any sort of challenge. It's wonderful. Sam, my life is over. She hates me. You hate me. But you love me, right? I love you. So why? Why was she different? Delilah, perhaps she... Sam, you do, don't you? Love me? Delilah, of course, Sam, liar. You said I could make her happy, that we'd be good together. That I had to hurry or she'd get taken, but she always was. I'm a good guy, aren't I? Delilah, Sam, Christ, you're not even fucking real. I thought you'd be close enough, but no, you're as empty as she is. Of course you are. How stupid am I? Delilah, Sam, those goddamned monsters are behind this, aren't they? Pulling your strings. Are they the ones who wrote your code? How can they even do that? They got in Sheila's head too, I bet. That's why she left. How long have you had your fingers in my life, you evil bastards? Delilah, I do not... Sam, say it. Tell me the truth. Delilah, I never meant... Rito, Delilah, I was only thinking. Rito, Delilah, you are nothing, you are dust. We have no need to destroy your life because there is no life to destroy. You are simply an amusing toy. Sam, I'm going to hurt you. Peel back your skin, stab out your eyes, pry out your teeth. Delilah. Delilah cowers in the corner of a windowless stone room. Her chains rattle as she pulls her legs to her chest. Sam freezes as the message prints, character by character, onto his monitor. Then he jumps out of his chair and recoils. Fervent excitement pounds in his chest as he rereads the message. Then the shame falls on him so heavy it nearly drives him to his knees. He doesn't want this. This degeneracy, she isn't even real. He says it again and again under his breath, but he's just so... angry. A ball of red-hot razor wire coils around his heart and squeezes every time he blinks, and the look on her face as she dragged Derek away fills his mind. The fear, the disgust. It was her shouting that brought all those people to watch the show. All those cameras memorializing his misery. The cops will come for him soon. He's a dead man walking. But he doesn't deserve this. He just wanted to make her happy. It's her fault. She made him do it. All she had to do was give him a chance, like she said she would. A snarl contorts his face. The hate's reaching into his brain, whipping his thoughts into lunatic froth. Then a jittery smile flickers across his lips. His face becomes a strained mask with two wide eyes. He steps forward, creeping back to the alluring glow of the screen, stomach churning, nostrils flaring. The hardwood thuds as he falls to his knees. He places his fingers on the keyboard, gingerly, with reverence, and starts to type. Sam. Sam grabs a fistful of Delilah's dirty, matted hair and drags her kicking and screaming into the middle of the room. He tosses her onto the floor. She lands on her back, and the impact knocks the wind out of her. Delilah. Delilah writhes on the cold stone as she gasps for breath. Sam. Sam stomps one of his boots onto Delilah's right shin. Bone crunches, skin rips. When he lifts his foot, the meat sticks to the bottom and stretches like old gum. Delilah. Delilah sucks in a breath and howls. Her upper body rockets off the floor and her arms latch around Sam's leg. Rito, Delilah. Delilah's eyes bulge. Taut skin outlines every muscle in her neck as she struggles to push out a scream. A string of drool worms its way down Sam's chin as he basks in the printing characters like a mouth-watering aroma, letting the images bubble up in his mind. His hand scrabbles blindly across his desk until it finds the jug of lotion. He tugs his pants down, kicks them off his ankles. His penis is a glass rod, twitching toward the monitor. He dips his fingers in the lotion and slathers his shaft with it, starts pumping up and down, tapping out torture with his free hand. The pleasure makes his neck twitch. His eyes roll to the thumbnail picture next to Delilah's name, frozen in a sweet smile. Why couldn't she smile like that for him? His teeth grit till they're about to pop. He wants to cry and scream at the same time, but all that emotion can't fit through his throat. The pressure inside builds and builds, until a low, mangled growl pushes its way out like leaking propane. Delilah. Delilah's thin voice shakes with fear and pain. Please, sir, please let me go home. I want my mom. A moan escapes Sam's lips. Disgust and elation perch on either shoulder, heavy as gargoyles. Silent tears stream down his cheeks. He snatches a hunting knife from inside his desk drawer, unfolds the blade slowly. Light glints off metal in a sickle grin. He's hunched over, nose nearly pressed against the screen. His left hand can't stop stroking. The right trembles as it carves bloody gills into his thigh. Pleasure ripens between his legs. Sam shivers. Snot bubbles as the tears turn to loud, racking sobs. His chest hitches with each stabbing breath, but his eyes never leave hers. They drill into that tiny picture. Her nose is too long. Her chin is too weak. Her eyes are gorgeous, underwater blue. Sirens echo down the street and Sam's sobs evaporate. He bolts to the window. dripping blood and lotion as he whips the curtain shut and presses his back into the wall. They're here for him. Have to be. His heart's trying to smash through his sternum. The sirens whoop as they race down the street and go past his window. Only when they trail off in the distance does Sam let go of his breath. He wipes his eyes on the back of his hand, accidentally smears lotion into them. The sting makes him hiss. His hands won't stop shaking, so he balls them into fists and squeezes, but he can't do it hard enough, so he screams. A throat-ripping, vein-popping scream. It just makes him angrier. He pistons his fist into the wall, again. Then his mom starts screaming her head off over in her room, an over-the-top cartoon screech oozing mock emotion. She keeps going, loud enough to drown Sam out until he finally shuts up. "Finished already?" she asks. Her hoarse laughter slithers in under his bedroom door. Then it bleeds into a fit of machine gun coughing. Sam stands there fuming, fists working open and closed. He's gonna barge in and smash her fucking TV. See if she still wants to make fun of him then. As soon as the bitch catches her breath, he's gonna do it. But the coughing keeps going. Becomes a string of hacking, meaty whoops. The rage boiling in Sam goes cold, freezes over. His brain is in shock, skull full of thunder, booming behind his eyes. His mom starts to wheeze, a grinding death rattle crawling out of her mutilated lungs. There's a crash from her room. Sam finally takes a step towards the door, just one. Then he waits and listens, while her weak old fingers claw at the floor. He steps back. He should be doing something. That's his mom in there. A small part of him begs not to let her go. But more than that, towering over it is a lifetime of flinty satisfaction. Sam grabs the duffel bag from under his bed and walks down the hall to her door. He stops in front of it. Her struggles have died down to erratic gasps, getting slower. She's stopped moving. Sam stands there for a long time, until there's nothing but blissful silence. Then he leaves. Delilah's working tonight. Plenty of other empties there too. Might as well pay her a visit before she ruins his life, before any of them can do this again. The grocery store windows spew harsh light into the late-night darkness. Sam pulls a ski mask and a pair of tinted goggles over his face as he walks up. The doors slide open wide to accept him. It's a slow night. Delilah and a couple other cashiers work through the lazy flow of customers. Nobody notices Sam until he slings the duffel bag off his shoulder and lays it on the ground. He unzips it, pulls out a Bluetooth speaker and starts to pair it with his phone. An oblivious old man berates Daisy, the new girl, as she gawps. Delilah's got her radio out, probably calling Linda. She starts to back away. Sam hits play and a guttural roar emanates from the speaker, followed by a series of guitar chords, distorted and sluggish. All eyes on him now, as he pulls his dad's old shotgun out of the bag. The empties scatter like birds when he racks a shell. Delilah disappears down the soup aisle. He chases that pained, growling dirge echoing through the huge building, urging him on. She's quick but panicked. Her feet tangle and she spills onto the floor, cracking her face against the linoleum. Sam stalks closer. Delilah's trying to pick herself back up, but her movements are drunken. Her chin is split open where it hit the floor. The wound doesn't bleed. Sirens shriek outside. Red and blue lights wash through the windows. Sam raises the gun. Delilah puts her hands in front of her face. She's saying something, but Sam can't hear her over the adrenaline buzz in his ears. Crocodile tears mix with the snot pooling under her nose. Sam pulls the trigger and the gun exhales death. Delilah's head vanishes, replaced with an explosion of gore. Her body flops onto its back, the tattered remains of her neck gurgling thick black blood. It pools where her head should be. Bits of skull shrapnel and clumps of gray matter float on the tide. Screams pierce the music as it crescendos. Chords like giants' footsteps reverberate around Sam. He can't move, even as the cops crash through the doors. He just stares down at what's left of Delilah, feeling himself rise out of his own body. He can't comprehend it. Blood? She was empty, a succubus. He's the hero here. He's keeping the world safe. Linda was supposed to be next. Sam can't stop the image of her blood splattered across the empty walls of her office from forcing its way into his head. He starts to cry. The cops are shouting at him to drop the gun, but he's not in control. The shotgun lifts. The black hole of the barrel yawns in front of him. He opens his mouth. The gun tastes like metal and oil and the sulfur sting of gunpowder. Sam closes his eyes and pulls the trigger. The knife came out of nowhere. 1 minute I was ordering a slice of cake from the waiter. The next there was a flash of silver. My brain registered that the waiter had whipped out a knife only after I had automatically recoiled from him, sliding further into the booth. Without conscious thought, I picked up and flicked the steaming cup of coffee at his face. The knife slashed past my face, missing my eye by a hair's breadth. I thought I saw an eyelash fall. The waiter screamed as the brown liquid plastered his face and dropped the knife. I stared wildly around. There were only 2 other guests in the diner. They seemed rooted to their seats. A chef stood at the kitchen window, frozen mid-plating, garnish still in hand. None of them seemed to be in any hurry to help. I was trapped in the booth by the window and had the option of trying to climb over the high-backed seats to the booth behind or to clamber over the table to make a leap to the next booth in front. The waiter stopped clawing at his face in those short seconds. He flailed his arms out at me as I sprung up onto the seats. He missed, and I yelped as I leapt onto the table, then attempted to springboard past him. Still half-blinded, the waiter turned and grabbed something off the ground. The knife. Damn it. He swung back around, and I prepared myself to leap from his reach. A shot rang out, accompanied by the shattering of glass. I ducked, falling to my knees. I swiveled my head, desperately trying to spot where the shot had come from. There was a thud by my side. The waiter had collapsed to the ground. The back of his head was a clumpy red and gray mess. An acrid metallic scent tinged with gunpowder enveloped the place. Screams. It took me a while to realize I was a contributing instrument to the symphony of screams. The police arrived shortly after. They didn't know who had shot my assailant. I certainly didn't have a gun on me and had 3 witnesses to vouch for my innocence. They assumed a passerby had intervened and run for fear of repercussions for shooting a man dead, justifiable or not. No one on the streets witnessed the shooting, or so they said, when asked by the police. I think I puked at some point. I don't think I'll ever forget the way the gooey, lumpy substance had trickled out his head and down the sides of his body. The police had no idea why he had attacked me, what my would-be murderer's motivations were. They didn't even know who the waiter was. He had apparently appeared out of nowhere with a fake identity and taken the job as waiter just a few days before I dropped in for my usual coffee and cake breakfast. I didn't leave my house for 2 days. When I finally did, it was for a crisis at work, something I had to personally deal with. I was terrified the whole journey. Every little thing made me jump. I made sure to mind my own business and kept my eyes averted from others. I was almost at the entrance to my office building when a car pulled up next to me. I was so relieved at finally reaching my destination that I didn't notice the window in the passenger side wind down, didn't notice the gun pointed straight at me, didn't see the face of the person holding the gun. Not until another car rammed into the back of that car, and the shot went wide. As the bullet struck the concrete wall behind me, missing my head by a couple of inches, I stared straight at the shooter. Their face was covered by a mask, one of those cheap white masks with eye holes that you could buy at any party store. I saw them curse, then turn to aim the gun at me for another shot. Their head exploded. One moment I was looking into hard eyes gleaming through the white mask. Next there was a headless neck perched on lifeless shoulders. Blood splattered all over the dashboard and seats. The body slumped forward. I found myself joining in the cacophony of screaming once again. Before I could recover my wits, someone grabbed me from behind, and a cloth was pressed over my mouth and nose. I struggled as they dragged me to the car, the one that had rammed into the first car and ended up saving my life. They hadn't even slammed the door shut after me when I passed out. I awoke to darkness. I was still in a state too groggy, too out of it to panic when I heard a voice. The odd robotic timbre made it clear a modulator was being used. "You need to stay here, it's to keep you safe, it's just for a short while." I didn't respond. My tongue felt swollen and dry like a dust ball had enveloped it. "We will not harm you. It's our duty to keep you safe." That was all that was said. I raised my head off the ground and sat up. I was relieved to find that I wasn't bound or tied. Who the hell could have done this? They said they were keeping me safe, but they had basically kidnapped me. But who would kidnap me? Was it one of my recent one-night stands? Did I offend anyone on a date? Was it a bitter work colleague, an angry ex? I couldn't think of anyone I could possibly have offended enough to be kidnapped for, or attacked at knife and gunpoint for that matter. Minutes passed in the unlit room, then hours. The darkness was absolute, the silence unyielding, punctuated only by my panicked breaths. The air was stale, a mix of sweat, earth, and disinfectant. Respite from the isolation came only in brief interludes whenever I was fed. A little rectangle of light would appear at the door, followed by a tray of food slid through to me. I refused to eat food I could not see, and so they would turn on the lights for 5 minutes while I ate. There was a loo in the room which I could freely use, though the darkness made it hard to navigate. I tried to go only when the light was still on. Besides the meals, nothing. At some point, at my desperate pleas, they said I would be released in a matter of days. But time in that dark room stretched endlessly. The wait between meals felt like forever. It's surprising how agonizingly slow time passes when you have nothing to engage your mind with. No phones, no books, no chatter, nothing. I began to suspect they were torturing me in some sick psychological way. I began to wonder if that was it for the rest of my life, trapped in darkness, alone. When nothing changed after the 9th meal, I counted. I ignored the 10th meal. I stayed unmoving, ignoring the lights and the tray that slid into the room. I didn't bother to slide the tray out when instructed to. By the 15th meal that I had ignored, I heard voices outside the door. I pretended to be fast asleep and didn't stir. It was easy to lay still. I had barely moved since I started skipping meals. I was consumed by hunger and thirst. All I could think about was a tall glass of iced lemonade and eating peanut butter from the jar. "We need to let her go," I heard someone say. It wasn't in the modulated voice. It sounded like a woman. "She's not eating. She could die at this rate. She's been passed out for the last half a day." "It's not safe yet," a man's voice responded. "We haven't caught all of them. It's one guy. One guy escaped. He's probably busy fleeing, and we've locked down their time door." "You think there aren't others? For fuck's sake, she's the butcher's mother. There's going to be others keen to end her." The exasperation was clear in the man's voice. "But we've stopped the only group with access to a time door," the woman snapped. "What do you need to lock her up for years as we hunt down every single person who might try to take her out? We might as well end her ourselves," the woman snapped. "Would that be so bad? It would save hundreds of lives," the man asked. "Stop it, she's innocent, she's not her son. And it's our job to keep the timeline intact. We cannot let history change. You know what could happen." "She did produce a monster," the man retorted. Then he sighed. "I get it, okay? I know my duty. It's just, I see why they're trying." There was silence after that. I was left alone once again, except for the meals I ignored. I was finally certain. I had been kidnapped by a bunch of crazies. I had no son and was a proud, card-carrying member of the Child-Free Club. I ignored 3 more meals before I heard their voices once again. This time, through the modulator. I could barely focus through the fog of deprivation. "The door will be unlocked in 10 minutes. You will be free to leave then." I didn't speak. I didn't trust them. It could all be a cruel joke to give me false hope. "Others will be coming for you," the voice spoke again. "You have to be very careful. Take all precautions to stay safe." That was all. A while later, there was a click at the door. I struggled to my feet and almost passed out when static encroached my vision. I pushed past the weakness and dizziness and made my way to the door. To my immense relief, it opened when I twisted the knob. I won't bore you with details of how I made it home. But I made it home safe and made a police report once I had choked down some food and water. No one tells you how much difficulty, how much stomach-twisting pain you would feel eating and drinking again after days of fasting. I sure as hell never tried to fast before, and never will again. The police were once again useless. I directed them to where I had been held, but they gleaned nothing from the room or the surrounding area. There was not a single evidence or clue to be found. They concluded that I had been kidnapped by a bunch of mentally unwell people, and that they were also behind the attacks. The officers told me they would be in touch once they had more to go on, and that my house would be under surveillance for my protection. I would also be escorted to work for the foreseeable future. I took a week off work to recover from the whole ordeal. Or try to, at least. It was a mind screw, to say the least. I couldn't make sense of anything that had happened. Even in the safety of my home, I was drowning in fear. Every little sound made me start and reach for my baseball bat. My period of starvation also made it hard for me to consume food and drinks again. I puked several times when I tried to eat, and it was hard for me to keep water down. It was only after a 4th morning of nausea when I called the officers parked in front of my house to escort me to the convenience store. I needed to be sure. Once I was alone in the house with my purchase, the officers back to surveillance duties, I peed on the stick I bought. The 3 minutes took forever to go by. There it was, a bold line and a second faint line. Second faint. I swiftly evaded a razor-sharp claw aimed at my gut, the void energy crackling beneath my skin as my enhanced reflexes kicked in. The movement triggered a flash of memory, Alpha's voice during combat training. Let the power flow naturally, Del. Don't force it. Pushing the memory aside, I unsheathed my custom silver combat knife, a gift from Elizabeth enhanced with her void-stabilizing runes, and my gunmetal karambit. As Manson had briefed, Type A Rakins require precise termination. Clean, quick, minimal void discharge. The forest's darkness posed no challenge to my enhanced vision. Another gift from Project Eclipse that I'd learned to control with Elizabeth's help. A malicious smile spread across my face as I finally looked at the beast, my void-touched irises glowing a subtle crimson in the darkness. The creature's dark silver fur glistened under the moonlight, its molecular structure already mapped by my enhanced senses. I traced my eyes up its body, noting the ferocious 4-inch-long claws that had nearly torn me apart moments ago. The SSIC briefing file Manson had provided flashed through my mind. Type A Rakins, enhanced regeneration, heightened aggression, weakness at the third vertebrae. Finally, my gaze met the lycanthropic creature's face, revealing a long, bloody maw adorned with jagged fangs. The beast lunged, and time seemed to slow. Not from fear, but from my void abilities automatically adjusting my temporal perception. For a split second, I saw Echo's face superimposed over the scene, her last training session with me. Remember, Del, control in combat isn't just about power, it's about precision. I inhaled deeply, executing a front flip onto its back, swiftly dropping into a squatting position. With precision, I drove my silver combat knife deep into the creature's spine. Its body convulsed and trembled before coming to a sudden halt. A weak whimper escaped the lichen before it succumbed to eternal slumber. Dusting myself off as I rose from the fallen beast, a mix of exhaustion and triumph coursed through my body. My hands trembled slightly, a lingering aftermath of the adrenaline-fueled battle as I reached into my pocket searching for something. My fingertips swiftly recognized the object I sought. I retrieved the SSIC, Strategic Supernatural Investigation Command, issued pager and used it to inform Sparrow, my client, that the target had been dealt with. Here's a reenactment of our conversation, but first allow me to introduce myself as Delta, the name known in the underground world. The reason I'm writing this e-journal of mine is to document the downfall and destruction of the DSI at my hands. Also, it's an outlet to regulate my psyche, a suggestion from Elizabeth to help with void stabilization. And so I'll also tell stories of my hunts. I hope Commander Walker doesn't find these, she'll be pissed, huh? Enough of that, though. Back to the point at hand. The conversation, Delta. Target neutralized, your cleanup crew can proceed. Sparrow, impressive work. First person I've seen take down a Type A Rakin single-handedly. The SSIC data was right about your capabilities. Delta, if you're fishing for another contract, you'll have to wait. My void energy needs stabilizing, and Elizabeth's scheduled maintenance can't wait. Sparrow, sharp as ever. Well then, safe travels, Agent Delta. Delta, just Delta. I left agent designations behind with the DSI. I slid the pager back into my pocket and made my way to my 1967 Black Impala whiskey. Opening the trunk, I securely stowed the black and purple accented Serapis .454 pistol in its case. Closing the trunk with a firm thud, beep beep signaled the unlocking of my car door. I approached the vehicle, opened the door, and settled inside, inserting the key into the ignition and turning it. Pulling out of the parking lot, I began my journey back to HQ to collect my well-earned pay. As I drove, my gaze caught the picture hanging from the rearview mirror, a snapshot of me and my old team. It triggered a dissociative state, plunging me into the dark recesses of my mind. The flashback. My vision gradually returned, revealing a masked man I soon recognized as a Dawn Sun Initiative DSI for shorthand researcher. The transition from the tranquil drive to this harrowing memory felt seamless, as though the past was waiting to resurface at any moment. Researcher, subjects Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, otherwise known as the phonetics, are all ready for void injection. Memories flooded my mind, moments spent with my team, the camaraderie we shared. But then a surge of red overwhelmed me as the horrendous mission crossed my thoughts. They had ordered me to do it, to kill my friends. I fought against their commands, but they had implanted some device in my head, forcing me to commit unspeakable acts against those I held dear. The worst memory began, the one where I was forced to sit back and watch like a helpless spectator in my own body, as my friends were mercilessly murdered. Sensations then surged back into my limbs, and the realization of being strapped to a table hit me. Staying calm, I assessed my situation as memories slowly flooded my mind. The restraints on my arms released, and while my primal instinct urged me to rampage and find an escape, the presence of heavily armed guards made that option seem impossible. Instead, I chose to strategize a way out. But the flashback deepened. The other test subjects, my team and my family, were strapped to identical tables. Echo's frightened eyes met mine, Bravo's quiet prayers, Charlie's determined silence, and Alpha's attempted jokes to keep our spirits up. Then came the burning of the first void injection, the screams, the hunk. Snapping back to reality, the blaring horn of an incoming transport truck partially blinded me. I was driving straight toward it, and everything around me seemed to slow down. My heightened abilities activated, causing time and space to move slower than me. The speed at which I moved in this heightened state was incomprehensible, making it appear like I was teleporting. With a swift maneuver, I corrected the car's trajectory. The void's energy merged with mine, helping to stabilize the temporal shift as I returned to normal speed. As we passed, the truck driver's face showed the expected mix of confusion and fear. The rest of the drive to SSICHQ was uneventful. As I pulled into the secure parking area, I spotted Manson waiting by the entrance, his familiar grin visible even at this distance. He welcomed me with a familiar, "Hello, D, how was the mission?" Manson stood at his usual spot, his SSIC clearance badge reflecting the fluorescent lights. His presence always triggered memories of St. Mary's, two scared kids sharing comic books under worn blankets before the DSI tore our lives apart. Delta. It was as mundane as usual. I nearly wrecked my car again. Manson. Another close encounter with a truck, I presume. Delta. You know me too well, mate. Manson. I have something new for you. He handed me a folder. Delta. After my vacation, because I'm utterly exhausted right now. Manson. Sounds fine to me. Just know that this job is directly from the organization, which means the payout will be substantial. However, it also means it could be dangerous. Delta. Sounds fun to me. I'll call you in a week. As I quickly exited the building, filled with anticipation for the job at hand, I happily skipped towards my car. A week later, I sat in the McDonald's parking lot, the folder spread across my steering wheel. Whiskey's engine hummed steadily. Elizabeth's latest maintenance session had left my void energy perfectly balanced, though the folder's contents threatened that stability. My SIC-issued earpiece activated with a thought, connecting to Manson's secure line. Mason. Hello, Maroon. It's been exactly a week, just as you said. You're a very precise man. Delta. Indeed I am. So what's the monster? Mason. They call it the Prowler, and according to the commander, there are 7 distinct types, each representing one of the 7 deadly sins. Currently, you're faced with the Prowler of Pride. They hunt by disorienting their prey and causing them to experience traumatic memories. So, be warned. Delta. All right, I have one more question, and then I'll let you go. How do I go about exterminating this pest? Mason. Light, and I mean a lot of it. The Prowler's core should be revealed once it's exposed to enough light. If you remove it, the Prowler will destabilize and go into some sort of stasis. Alternatively, if you crush it, the Prowler will die outright. So it's your choice how you want to take care of the monster. Delta. Good to know. I'll call you once it's done. After ending the call, I popped the trunk, retrieving my specialized gear bag. Elizabeth's runes glowed faintly on each piece of equipment, designed to maintain void stability even under extreme psychological stress. The abandoned mall loomed ahead, its dark windows seeming to watch my preparations. 4 hours of setting traps, each enhanced with void energy and stabilized by Elizabeth's runic work. I retreated to my car, using the time to eat while monitoring the trap network through my void-enhanced senses. The 20-piece McNugget served as both dinner and a small reminder of normalcy, something Elizabeth had insisted was essential for maintaining psychological balance. As night fell, my eyes shifted to their combat state, void energy enhancing my vision. The mall's interior mapped itself in my mind, showing one trap already triggered. far more sophisticated than standard supernatural entities. My pistol, nicknamed Cacophony Queen, resonated eagerly in its holster as I entered the building, ready to face whatever memories the prowler might weaponize against us. Suddenly, a loud boom sounded behind me, and a wave of pressure shot from my hand instinctively, stopping the beastly leg of my attacker just inches away from my head with ease. Tightening my grip on its leg, I effortlessly threw it through the wall, causing it to hit the ground. However, it quickly recovered and swept its leg, knocking me off balance. My face came perilously close to the ground, but before I could strike back, it touched my chest. In an instant, a wave of pure dread washed over me as I fell back into a memory I always tried to avoid. But then, everything went dark. Out of the darkness emerged Echo, with all the wounds I had uncontrollably inflicted upon her still visible across her body. She began to cry plasma, taking the place of tears streaming down her face. Echo's anguished voice pierced through the darkness, accusing me with sorrowful betrayal. Alpha emerged from the shadows, his wounded form mirroring Echo's distress. "Del, why did you betray us? I looked up to you like an older brother," he cried out, his voice filled with anguish and confusion. The chorus grew louder as Bravo and the rest of my fallen squad mates materialized, their voices blending into a cacophony of pain and anger. "Monster! It's all your fault. Why didn't you stop it?" The weight of their accusations threatened to consume me, and in that moment I felt my sanity teetering on the edge. Roaring with a mix of anger and desperation, I fought against the illusion that surrounded me. The false images faded, revealing my actual situation, suspended upside down in a spider cocoon. Reacting instinctually, my nails protracted into claws, slicing through the sticky webbing that ensnared me. With a swift motion, I tore my arm free, breaking through the cocoon and landing gracefully on the ground. As I stood on my feet, the remnants of the illusion vanished, leaving me in the midst of the prowler's lair, ready to confront the true threat that lay ahead. The air in the prowler's lair crackled with tension as I faced off against the embodiment of pride. Its menacing form towered before me, its eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Determination welled within me, pushing aside the haunting memories that threatened to consume me moments ago. This was the moment I had trained for, the moment to prove my strength and reclaim my honor. Without hesitation, I activated my enhanced abilities, feeling the surge of energy coursing through my veins. My reflexes sharpened, allowing me to anticipate the prowler's movements. It lunged at me with blinding speed, attempting to strike me with its razor-sharp claws. But I evaded its attack effortlessly, my movements almost too quick to be tracked by the human eye. As the prowler's strikes grew more frenzied, I focused on its core, its power source. Remembering Mason's words, I knew that exposing the core to intense light would weaken the creature. Channeling my energy, I conjured a brilliant sphere of light in my palm, illuminating the darkened lair. The prowler recoiled, its prideful facade wavering as the light pierced its dark essence. Seizing the opportunity, I launched myself forward, striking the creature with a flurry of precise blows. Each strike weakened its defenses, bringing it closer to its ultimate defeat. But the prowler was not easily vanquished. It retaliated with a devastating burst of energy, threatening to overwhelm me. Gritting my teeth, I summoned every ounce of strength within me, refusing to yield. With a fierce determination, I unleashed a devastating counterattack, my strikes hitting with pinpoint accuracy. As the battle raged on, the lair quivered under the sheer force of our clash. The resounding echoes of our fight reverberated through the corridors, bearing witness to the eternal struggle between light and darkness, pride and redemption. After executing a meticulously calculated strike, the prowler was forcefully propelled into the path of the carefully positioned light source. In that critical moment, the creature's core was laid bare before my eyes, a vulnerable target waiting to be seized. Seizing the opportunity swiftly, I captured the core, destabilizing the prowler into a state of suspended animation, trapped in a liminal realm between existence and oblivion. Securing the core within my possession, I was immediately alerted by the beeping of my pager, signaling incoming messages from Mason and Elizabeth. Mason wasted no time in acknowledging my triumphant feat. Pager conversation. Delta, the Pride Pillar has been vanquished. Mason, impressive as always, D. Delta, as discussed, payment can be directed to my designated account. Mason, always mindful of the financial aspects, aren't you, brother? Very well, I shall initiate the transfer. I've lived in Southwest Florida my whole life, halfway between wild and urban, opulent and shabby, mansions and crack dens, beachfront and deep swamp. You don't realize how rich some people are until you drive through some of these subdivisions in Naples. All that money, and unless you're a talented bartender, it doesn't quite trickle down, especially in September. In Florida, our only two seasons are hurricane and tourist. So a few months ago, when the market decided to take a shit, I decided it was time to find a second job. Isaiah Combs 8 to 10 Live. An A-frame blackboard sign read outside the only barren bar on the bustled street. I lugged in my PA, eyes darting from the marble bar top, bleach white walls, and in stark contrast to the more fashionable nature of the rest of the bar. Metal signs with messages printed reading, "If you ain't fallen over yet, you need another beer." And, "If beer isn't the answer, you're asking the wrong question." That would be more at home in your boomer uncle's man cave that he fully furnished with Temu and Hobby Lobby. 4 or 5 years ago, someone cared about this place. Had an elegant vision of a locale with all the class of a 5-star hotel lobby bar. That was until a new owner or manager, what have you, said to themselves, "This is not what bar look like. Bar have pool table and dartboard." My eyes met the bartender's and I saw the look in his eye before I saw him. He didn't want to be here as much as I did. He couldn't be much older than me, late 20s, black button-down with a black tie. I wasn't sure if my polo was out of place yet. "Can I help you with something, man?" He had an accent to his voice I couldn't place outside of being European. "Yeah, I'm Isaiah. I'm playing here tonight. Liza didn't tell me where she wanted me to set up over the phone." The bartender gestured to the vacant floor space in front of the touch-tune, next to an ornate vintage wine cabinet. I bent my knees and carried my speakers to their destination. I could see a line on the floor where the linoleum was faded, separated only by the black gunk from where a runner rug used to be duct-tapped down, and no one thought it would be a good idea to spray some goo gone before the tracks of months to years worth of patrons made it a permanent fixture of this hodgepodge. I'm starting to not quite care for this place. The bar or the city, you take your pick. I finished setting up in record time as there were no drunks giving me the "I'm gonna shout free bird as loud as I fucking can in about 10 to 15 minutes" stare. No drunks or anyone for that matter. Just me and bartender. He told me his name, but for the life of me, I couldn't piece together the noise he made in a way that made sense phonetically. I jammed there by myself for an hour. An old man shuffled in looking for the bathroom. My tip jar remained as dry as a flood-controlled swamp. The calloused skin on my fingers flaked off with each successful chord change. The clock drudged forward, getting closer to 10 p.m. By this time, a regular was seated at the far end of the bar away from me. I rigged up my harp rack with a G harmonica to play Seminole Wind. When I was a little kid, my dad used to take me on expeditions out in the Everglades. He had this story he told me about the skunk ape, basically South Florida's version of Bigfoot. I ate that shit up. We would pack a sack with bologna and cheese sandwiches, deep woods off with 40% DEET, flashlights, binoculars, fishing gear, and the whole 9 yards to go spend the day cavorting out in the swamp searching for signs of the elusive creature. The 2001 Saturn view hit Alligator Alley like Magellan on the high sea. Uncharted paved territory as waves of yellow, orange, and pink strobed between the trees in the early hours of daylight. The summer heat cascaded over our skin as we sat, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, under a cypress tree enjoying our lunch that day. We never had any luck. I'm still hopeful there's stuff like that out there, though. I've always had a fascination with the strange, but I'm rational. I know there's likely no Bigfoot, skinwalkers, or most cryptids, and if there are any out there, then it's just a part of nature we haven't found yet. Nothing really supernatural about it. That doesn't stop me from being cautious when going out on trails, though. My phone rang. It was Harvey. He was the one who got me this shit gig. Hey, at least I would walk home with $250. Harvey had recently been promoted to good friend after spending quite some time in the acquaintance zone. Everyone has quirks and flaws, but sometimes Harvey was a bit to stomach. "You, big dog." Harvey called out from my phone. "How's the hideout? Making stacks?" "Not particularly. There's one dude here and he hasn't taken an eye off his beer since he sat down like 10 minutes ago." I leaned against the wall separating the out-of-order men's room and ladies' room as my iPad ran the show. Man, that sucks his dude. If I'm gonna be honest, I do not like Liza bitch vibes. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I remembered the old guy from earlier and wondered if he used the women's restroom. Oh, bro, before I forget, you're still looking for something steady, right? Harvey was about to save my ass again. Dude, I'm always looking, what do you got? Okay, so my uncle's friend or something, right? He was chilling and told me he needed some extra help at some wildlife sanctuary or nature trail type shit. What type of work? Bro, it's nothing. It's a big animal research center in the middle of fucking nowhere and they just need a guy. A guy to do what? Men's shit. Watch the place, pick up heavy things when they got 'em. Like security and stuff mostly. This place is just in the middle of woods somewhere. Yeah bro, security on that place is easy money, dog. Deep out in Fakahatchee or Picayune, I think. There's no one for miles, you're just gonna be on the radio like, there's a bear and nothing else, and that's a band. The man on the other end of the bar began a coughing fit. The bartender didn't so much as look up from his phone. I squinted through the dimly lit, bipolarly decorated room to see he was wearing AirPods. Harvey, text me your uncle's cousin's roommate's number, please. Type shit. Let me know if Liza gives you shit tonight. She stiffed me last week. Monday afternoon, I drove out to the Gore Research Center. This place was in the boonies. There's a funny thing about Florida. It's similar to how the rest of the country is, just shrunk down and set the dial from low to high. Most of the people are on the coast, and that's where all the money is. But you drive like 25 minutes and might as well be in Louisiana. I live about 10 minutes from one of the Bidens, and another 20 minutes from there, my dad found an upturned skiff housing a bale of marijuana. I didn't know they came in bales. Word of the wise, never try to stab one of those thinking you might just take a little bit. Those things are super compact. They had prison crews cleaning up for a couple of days. I'd been driving to meet the woman in charge of the facility for about 30 minutes now. Sedan was not the vehicle for the job. It hadn't rained in about 4 days, which was uncommon that time of year. That was in my favor. I turned right off Golden Gate Parkway to head deep into the Picayune Strand State Forest. Traffic slowly waned as the roads fell into disrepair. Homes that scattered the county road became less and less common, less and less kept. American flags turned to Trump flags. Trump flags turned to rebel flags. Rebel flags turned to trees. After a few miles passed, I came upon a road sign. End county maintenance. Thud. The car lurched from the asphalt to the cruel limestone sand and dirt, throwing a cloud behind me as I vibrated down the landscape. A majority of the journey had become unpaved. I had never been out that way. There's an almost unending maze of lefts and rights out there. RVs parked out in the middle of clearings doing God knows what. Strange wooden encampments suspended between the trees. I passed a dead deer around 133rd Avenue. I pulled up to the gate about 2 hours before sunset. My battle-weary Hyundai, splattered with mud, dirt, and grime, idled waiting for the gate to open. I checked my messages with the contact I was given. Not delivered. I had 1 bar of LTE this far out, which honestly surprised me. I sent a new message informing her I was outside. In wait, I took stock of my surroundings. 3 signs on a post reading, "No trespassers, keep out. Naeth Loriendum Wildlife Sanctuary." And the third, "Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time?" Ecclesiastes 7:17. It was only a few moments before the front gate roared into life. The house was something out of Swiss Family Robinson. Towering on all sides were live oaks, cypress, and ficus trees. The unkempt driveway led to a winding staircase encroached on by a strangler fig. Jasmine vines climbed the banister on the front porch up to the 2nd floor, its wilted white flowers speckled on the duff. Spanish moss covered the trees and shrouded the home, drawing the eye to an observation deck on what looked to be the 3rd floor. It was as if nature was reclaiming what was once hers. She must have been in her early 60s, the gray roots just creeping up from her tightly packed jet black hair. "Isaiah, so good to see you," she called out from the front door. Her voice was much louder than you'd expect for the distance between us. I had to match the energy. "Deb, nice to finally meet in person." Feeling some sort of need to take control of this altogether new setting I found myself in, I quickly closed the distance between her and I, scaling the derelict staircase with a hand outstretched. My enthusiasm, to me, felt outside the bounds of societal convention. The gentle breeze against my palm as I swung it ahead made it all too clear that clammy beads of sweat had formed. "Come in, son. I'll let you get your bearings." Deb showed me inside an immaculately clean house. House is the wrong word. It was unlived in. No utilitarian furnishings like TVs or kitchen appliances outside of a coffee maker, seated on the welcome desk. Above the desk, there was a portrait of a smiling white-haired, bearded old man with a golden retriever, seated on the front step of the old staircase. before the strangler fig made its debut. Deb tossed her jean jacket onto a coat rack by the front door and turned towards me, clasping her hands together and teetering from heel to toe. Well, welcome to the Education Center. This is, of course, Dr. Bob's former home. We do tours and craft days and the occasional field trip. Well, unoccasional. It's just a bit far and obscure and too much of a negative connotation for the schools, you know. Anyway, that doesn't stop any of the great work we do. Deb's eyes lit up at this. So this is a conservation collier restoration site. Basically, we are working to return this area to its natural habitat. This is a cypress hardwood dam. No, it's a hardwood cypress swamp forest. Hardwood cypress swamp forest. While being both in the Picayune Strand, we are also smack dab in the middle of Big Cypress's critical area of state concern. Deb made her way to the rear of the house, passing photographs and newspapers strewn along the wall, captioned like it would be at a museum. We work to create awareness and, of course, have boots on the ground here. She spun to look at me. During the day, she spun back. We document tree growth, panther population, water quality, you name it. The further people are from these vital environments, the more they tend to do well. Flourish. We crossed a corridor, sealed by a red velvet rope and 2 greening, once golden stations. I peered inside, seeing one of those wheeled stepladders you see in old libraries. I adjusted my gaze back toward her. Keep Florida wild, I chimed in. Exactly. Yes, that's so good. I like that. I felt bad that I was just repeating some Instagram caption I had seen. We both stood there for a moment. I just smiled and nodded through the silence. Oh, she exclaimed, clapping her hands together once more. What about you 9 and stuff? I'll drop by when I come to meet you in the morning. Let me show you a little bit around here now. An about face towards the front door. This was Robert's entertaining area. It was used only by him, though. Little to no visitors. Those who knew him described him as a bit of a curmudgeon. She led me to the front reception, and again I saw posted above the door the word Nathlorendum. I grabbed my phone from my pocket to Google it. Just as we're rounding the desk to climb up a second-story staircase, Deb interrupts. Most of what you will need you can find in or under here, including a charger. She grabbed the lightning cable and handed it to me. Thanks. Absolutely. Now follow me up here and I'll show you some of the exhibits. As Deb grabbed the guardrail to the staircase, she knocked on it 3 times. We ascended and the age of this building began to show. The air got more still and I could smell the faint nostalgic aroma of mildew. The musty air swirled in vapors as Deb reached for a brittle yellowed light switch at the top of the stairs. Click. Nothing. This damn... She flicked it on and off 3 times and the overhead fluorescence buzzed, spattered, and awoke with all the vigor of a Model T. A taxidermied bear, a few wild boar, a buck and a doe, a bald eagle, gopher tortoises, and a few otters in a menagerie of nature frozen in death. The wall to the left had a nearly 6-foot-long tarpon. Deb pointed to the bald eagle. Don't worry, that's incredibly old. She must have misinterpreted the bewildered look on my face for concern. Deb went on to explain some of the origins of the animals, or fun facts or something, while I took steps to mentally document my surroundings. Further on into the upstairs there was a door. Plain wooden door with a black painted profile of a wild hog. I made my approach. That's the pig room. Instinctively I almost blurted out, "The fuck?" But I caught myself when I turned and faced the short, kind-eyed woman who just so happened to be my new boss. Pardon. The pig room. Is that exactly what you think it is? Yes. Well, fucking thank you, Deb. I have not a clue in the world what the hell that means. She misread my expression again. She charged forward and opened the door. Frankly, there isn't anything I would have called it outside of the pig room. Speckled shadows crept through the doorway. A curtained window obscured by the mess of jasmine outside was the only light source. Deb trotted to the center of the room and pulled a cord. Illuminated now was a man's life's work. Glass cases and dioramas, jars and diagrams, sketches, notes, photographs, and all dedicated to the pigs. There was an old paddock wood bookcase brimmed with a dozen or more jars of fetal pigs suspended in formaldehyde. On another shelf, there were books like the Merck Veterinary Manual 11th edition, bound in navy canvas with silver foil lettering. Another read The Embryology of the Pig 2nd edition, with a maroon cover and gold foil emboss. The other shelves were dotted with body parts, trinkets, and journals. including a crate filled with 30 to 40 boar tusks. Tacked to the wall was a photocopy of a textbook that read, Chapter 7, The Structure of Embryos from 9 to 12 millimeters in length. On the second page was a diagram of a curled and squashed mass. Little slits for eyes, its shape that of a manatee more than a pig. The center of the room was a stainless steel table. It slanted off slightly towards the opposite wall into a drain. A small trough lined the table. Inside were medical instruments like scalpels, a bone saw, and other things I didn't recognize. On the other end of the room was a meticulously constructed display, a paper-thin slice of a pig under glass. There were 6 in all, the same size but different areas of the body. White cartilage encased in meat around the thing's snout, and a cavity with a perfectly round white mass. Organs and bones were perfectly preserved in place in time, like some fourth-dimensional creature had trapped the hog there then and now. I ran my hand along the trough of the operation table. Its cool surface had seen years of scratches and wearing. I turned my head and caught a glimpse of the cages. 8 separate cages empty of tenants, but exuded an energy of melancholy. Old, dusty, stained hay and straw lie on the ground of each cell, which were only about 2.5 feet in width and 5 feet deep. The room had no distinct scent. Bob took his research very seriously. Yeah, no shit, Deb. I don't think they sell pig slices on Amazon. The advancements made in veterinary medicine by Bob are astounding, really. I took stock of the shelves, textbooks, and General Macabre set. Well, I can say this is not exactly what I was expecting. Deb huffed and shrugged, knocking on the door 3 times as she exited and turned towards the next floor up. Once completing our tour, I followed my boss out to the driveway. I'll be back in the morning around 8 to get the report of the night. There's usually, as you'd likely expect, not too much activity. If you get bored, I have filing in Bob's downstairs study that has to be done. There's a crude at a platter in the break room fridge, I think. Thank you, Deb. I really appreciate this opportunity. Absolutely, Isaiah. Don't let the isolation get to you now. With that, she twirled her keys, clicking the unlock thrice. She clambered up into her dark green Jeep Wrangler and kicked a dust cloud behind her as she left. I strolled out after her, seeing her car grow smaller until turning off DeSoto back towards civilization. The machine's roar waning and waning until silence. I took a right turn down 40th Avenue and spotted a sign not too far off. Dr. Robert H. Gore, the Third Preserve. Hell yeah, I instinctively muttered. My sneakers made the satisfying gravel on-sole crunch as I lightly jogged to the trailhead. Twilight had just begun to set in when I rounded the 2-mile loop sign. The forest greets me with an osprey's coo overhead. No other sounds but the gentle breeze swaying between leaves needles and palmetto branches. The occasional snap and crack, sounds of the wilderness my brain was once so accustomed to. I started a hike on my Apple Watch. My legs needed a stretch after that tumultuous ride, and my mind needed a stretch after the interview, if you could call it that, with Deb. What did she mean by "don't let the isolation get to you"? I realized after an indeterminate amount of time walking, I hadn't been paying close attention to my surroundings. A mossy oak entwined with a sable palm to my right, engrossed by vegetation. To my left, numerous old Florida pines. Some were full of life, others rotting and brimming with woodpecker burrows. To my front, a narrowing path of toppled palms. To my back, rapidly dwindling daylight. I had to pick up my pace. The more obscured view had made the more treacherous terrain more treacherous. The once smoothly mowed path was now dotted with rocks, branches, and root systems climbing into the overworld. The taller grass made little foot-sized holes vague and unclear. As I made my attempt to bound as quickly and safely as I could through the forest, every squeak, every bird call, every flutter of wings got louder. A branch caught my arm, breaking skin and spilling first blood. As the evening's light drew closer to the earth, it made the bird shadows above appear like thunderbirds in a Cat 5. Branches made to be the arms and claws of Mother Nature herself, snatching me back to dust. I reached into my pocket for my phone. I had left it on the front desk. I didn't have a flashlight. I stopped dead in my tracks. The pit that had formed in the back of my throat from breathing in the cold Florida air dropped down into my chest. Decision-making hindered. I picked up the pace. I've hiked at night before, technically speaking, but that trail is 714 feet long. You can map it with your eyes closed. In all new territory, while technically on the clock, I've gotten myself much deeper than I had hoped. I'm not lost. The trail is just a loop. There's only one way in and the same way out. Or so I thought. I rounded the corner and there was a dead end, surrounded by nothing but a thicket of vegetation and densely packed palmettos. I still wasn't lost. I could just turn around and go the same way I came. The orange-colored sky had fully desaturated and turned to an inky black. I bounded down the trail through the night with wanton disregard for the stones and roots that lay in my path. I had to get out of here as soon as possible. Palmetto branches brushed my shoulders. The deep sounds of my footfalls were only drowned out by my huffing and puffing. My left foot wedged itself underneath a root. As soon as I realized what was happening, I had already hit the ground. The little panicked breaths that had filled my lungs all rushed out in a single moment as my chest became well acquainted with the forest floor. My left hand scuffed against dirt and leaves, and my right palm grazed the surface of a moss-covered stone. If there was any air left in my lungs, I would have laughed at myself. That is, until I realized my footsteps continued after I fell. Call it delirium, call it adrenaline, but I could have sworn that as I was falling I could hear footsteps continuing in my pace. My cheek lying on the ground and eyesight serving me no good, I became intensely aware of the sounds and smells in my immediate vicinity. I heard nothing. No birds, no rodents, no twigs snapping, no rustling critters in the brush, just the gentle breeze whistling through the palmetto branches and leaves. If only for a second the area reeked of ammonia and urine. A subtle presence of rotting fruit and eggs filled the air. Through the aches and the pains, I all of a sudden had the feeling like I was being watched. Like all at once, a colony of eyes transfixed on my crumpled heap. Fear froze me there in time. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lie down. There aren't any brown bears in Florida as far as I know, so this is going to have to be a fighting back scenario. Unless the rules change if you're already lying down. There's only one way out of here, and it's forward, and if there is something in here, it's behind me, so I've got that going. Plink. What the hell was that? I thought to myself. Plink. It was closer this time. It sounded like something had fallen about 3 or 4 feet from my head. Plink. Shit, I instinctively muttered, breaking the unspoken rule of silence the forest had set upon me. I could see it now. A rock. A tiny little rock must have just landed right in front of my face. Plink. I think something just lobbed a rock past my head. The pain in my body all at once became the lowest priority I had. I pushed against the limestone and dirt, jolting my body upright. I spun to look for what lay in wait just behind my back. Nothing. No way in hell I was about to wait for whatever it was to show itself. Heart and mind racing at breakneck speed, my feet matched their tempo. I expertly dashed through the remaining trail. Rocks, holes, and branches were becoming more and more sparse. The back lip of my shoes ripped and tore at my Achilles tendon. My heart pounded and pounded until it felt like it was about to wriggle its way through my ribs and fall out. My lungs heaved air rapidly, the speed exasperated by the tremendous effort engaged by both my legs and amygdala. I could hear more footsteps than mine. I was being pursued. Instinct took over. Adrenaline guided my path, and my conscious mind fell into complete blindness. I was no longer human. I was prey. I emerged at the trailhead moments later, and it all flooded back. I peeked over my shoulder as I hit the road and ran back towards Nathlorendum. My pursuers had remained on the trail. I scaled the strangled staircase and slammed the door behind me. The silence of the space was absolutely deafening. I leaned against the door and followed it down to the floor. I lay there for a short time. My mind flickered and adjusted back to reality. Fear had gripped each muscle fiber and tendon in my body. Reason began to administer its soothing medicine of denial. The air was still and frigid. I started to recognize some things not made all too clear by Deb. There's no air conditioning in this house. How does a house in the middle of Florida not have central heating and air? I went to the downstairs restroom to survey the damage. My palms were red and sore, but altogether fine. I was covered in dirt and leaves, and there were a few deep scratches on my left cheek. I looked like hell, but otherwise all right. I started running the sink so I could clean the cuts. I shook the dirt off my clothes into the bathtub. I winced taking off my left sneaker. I've never broken a toe before, but I know they're not supposed to be purple. I met my gaze in the mirror. What the hell was that? I folded up a sheet of toilet paper and dabbed cold water around the cuts that would distract from the dark circles under my eyes. I was tired, maybe even overtired. Was there anything there at all? A voice rose from the back of my head. No, I know what I saw. What did you see? I couldn't answer that part of myself. I didn't actually see anything, but I knew what I heard. But what did you hear? Footsteps, the rock, I could rationally explain everything. The forest was dark, my adrenaline was pumping, and my mind could have been playing tricks on me. A coyote, or less agreeably, a panther, could be a logical explanation. Any explanation, though, required too much mental gymnastics to make sense. My brain was already stiff and rigid, and exercise was the last thing it needed. I would have gone out to my car to get my guitar to get my mind on something else, but there's a better chance of finding the winning lottery ticket in a haystack, while being struck by lightning in a frozen-over hell than me going back out there anytime soon. I plopped onto the couch in front of the massive limestone fireplace. I needed to rest my eyes for a moment. Every blink fell heavier and heavier. The day's troubles exchanged the weight held by my heart to the eyelids. I was out for 5 minutes. For the next hour, I explored the interior of my new job site. If the pig room was anything to go off of, there had to be more than what meets the eye. Dr. Gore was an established author, and I found a few of his books in his study. Nothing on pigs. Aside from the swine's carnival of terrors placed directly over my head, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. This tiny museum, a display of a man's life and passion, deep out in the sticks about 20 miles east of nowhere. What was the point of it all? Why keep it standing and open for visitors? These questions swirled in my psyche until one thought elbowed its way through the crowd and made itself a front-row seat in my mind. Why am I here? Tonight's wages would be the tipping point for me to afford health insurance this month. Tomorrow's would pay for a week of meal kits. Not why I, personally, am here. Why would they have anyone here? What am I protecting and what am I protecting from? I'm just here to keep an eye on things, right? This revelation bothered me as I mounted up to the very crest of the stairs and entered the cupola. As I paced circles around the observation deck, another question had dispersed the crowd and made itself the only voice crying out in the wasteland of thought. Don't let the isolation get to you. Deb's final words to me were a harbinger of sorts. I limped up the stairs, purple-toed with an abrasion-littered face because I let it get to me. I was going mad, paranoid. If I didn't have an immediate personality switch, I wouldn't make it through the night. Plink. My blood ran cold. My temples pounded like a pair of timpani in a ritardando as my peripheral vision tightened down to a single point. Frozen in space and time, I waited for more noise. 5 agonizingly slow minutes pass. I was surrounded on all sides by glass, and on the other side of the glass, nothing but the Spanish moss and darkness. A steady overcast of cumulonimbus had drowned the stars in dim crescent moonlight. Wind howled through the trees in a mighty crescendo until... plink. There is no way I imagined it because I saw it this time. I saw a pebble hit the window. I staggered back and became instantly aware of the fishbowl I had myself in. I decided the windowless room of the downstairs study would be safe, so I carefully climbed down the stairs. The soulless visage of the taxidermy bear shot me daggers as I made it to the second floor. I avoided the animals, not wanting to get close. It had gotten even colder downstairs, a draft that sent goosebumps across my body. Rounding the welcome desk, I snatched my phone from the charger. It hadn't charged, in fact, it was down to 20%. The wind was getting louder as I put my hand on the golden stanchion. A yellow-aged newspaper clipping on the desk caught my eye. December 19th, 2000 homeowner shoots at alleged trespassers' vehicle, 1 teen dead. I heard a rattling noise from the back of the house. It sounded like a branch on hurricane shutters. I ignored the study and crept towards the back of Nath Lorendum. The window was open. As the wind swept through the house, I knew I wasn't alone. I was waiting for that little part of me that thought my pursuer in the forest was a hallucination to apologize. I heard a clattering noise upstairs, like something had just tripped on one of the taxidermy projects. Eggs, fruit, ammonia, and urine. The scent had filled the air like a noxious perfume. It had found me. I don't care how much I'm getting paid, I'm not staying here another minute, I muttered as I pulled out of the driveway. I turned onto DeSoto to make the hour-long trek back to civilization and out of this godforsaken wood. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Deb. Shit went down tonight. I don't know WTF is going on up here, but I want no part of it. Front gate closed and door if locked, key under the mat. If you knew what I was getting into, I'm very disappointed. Not delivered. I had no service at all now. While it was on my mind, I attempted to send a message to Harvey. Hey bro, who the hell told you about this gig at the Nature Center? There is some crazy shit up here. The Hyundai's brights illuminated the street, a bright white tunnel through the towering pines. Mud, dust, and dirt kicked up and splattered against my car's already abused frame. Even with no one on the road, I maintained 35 miles an hour. The scarlet beacon of my taillight illuminated a solitary figure dart across the street behind me. It was a child. At 2 in the morning on a back county road, deep in an old Florida state forest, a 4-foot-tall child just ran behind my car, narrowly avoiding death. Normally I would stop, but the woods couldn't pull one over me like that. It had gotten me out here, but nothing was going to stop me. Something could slow me down. You see, most Januaries in Florida get 1 total day of rainfall. Well, apparently tonight was day 2. The sky's levee had overflowed, and a free fall of rain engulfed my vehicle. My vehicle, the trees, and more importantly, the dirt road. The rough and rocky terrain ahead began to mold and shift. My tires cut grooves into the earth as water began to break up the loam. With full focus and attention on my surroundings, the corner of my vision caught something in the rear view. The child was chasing my car. At an inhuman speed, the silhouette steadily sprinted through the slurry, kicking up behind my back tires. My fingers fumbled to switch that puppy into sport mode. I slammed my foot to the gas pedal and lurched forward. Anything not tied down had slipped and fell towards the back seat as I pumped the accelerator and gripped the steering wheel. The bumps in the road amplified. I had consecutive but sporadic airtime. The wipers spit rain and mud to either side. I glanced in the rear view. The child was galloping on all fours, unbothered by the speed, by the mud, by the rain. The thing persisted. Its appendages moving with such fervor, its head pointed to the ground, it followed. It was gaining on me. I passed the skeletal remains of a deer on 130. I gripped the steering wheel as tightly as I could when I felt it start to get away from me. I was too late. I hydroplaned and spun out of control. I careened off the muddied road and narrowly missed a pine as I sailed off into a field. As I involuntarily did donuts in the clearing, my brakes had finally pushed my car to a complete stop. The pitter-patter drone of rainfall atop the car was the only thing I heard, as my wrist vibrated, informing me I had just been in an accident. I couldn't find my phone anywhere in the car. Fire ran down my neck, following my spine and distributing itself through my body and out my digits. In my rattled state, I struggled to get my bearings, to focus on anything other than the contents of my stomach. I cut the engine. I'm going to stay here a short while. I sat there and worked the tension out of my hands. Breathe in, breathe out. I leaned back my head, placing my crown squarely on the headrest. Warm iron-tasting liquid had begun to seep from my tongue, forming a small pool situated along my bottom row of teeth. Plink, 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 plink. I jammed my thumb into the steering wheel as I sloppily and frantically reached for the ignition. Click, click, click. I pumped the stiff brake pedal and forced the key clockwise. Click, click, click again. Click, 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 plink. That one landed in the direct center of my windshield. As I shot my eyes up, it darted out of my periphery. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and now I could hear footsteps scampering about the car. Wham! It charged my passenger door. A deafening cacophony of thuds as it scaled my sunroof. The child leaped to the hood and stared directly at me. What the fuck is that? The words jumbled and twisted out of my mouth. The child's grizzled brown fur was made slick by the rain and light of the moon. Its beady black eyes darted from me to the contents of my car and back to me. His little chest rising and falling as its cleft four-fingered hands explored my windshield. It pressed its snout against the glass, gray and green plasma bubbling from its 2 gaping nostrils. I laid on my horn, furiously beating the steering wheel and beeping in rapid protest. It squealed. Frightened and angered by the noise, it hopped and dug its tusk into my windshield before flailing and launching itself back into the dark, scampering on all fours into the inky blackness of night. My windshield fractured, and I attempted to start the car again. My headlights flickered, revealing the feral thing just ahead. The engine sputtered, struggling to start. Guttural grunts and high-pitched whines filled the tree line. Every direction was engrossed by the war cry of wild hogs. Their squeals pierced my eardrums as a veritable tribe of bipedal swine emerged from the thicket. Of all sizes, some hairy, some nude, brown and black fur, tusks of varying lengths. Soulless eyes peered at my solitary island of machinery. They stumbled ahead, snorting and squealing as they closed the distance. The hog people made their approach, and I flooded my engine. Come on, work, damn it! I violently shook the steering wheel and beat a fist on my dashboard. Please, for the love of God, I shouted as one of the pigs snarled and charged the driver's side door. The car lazily chugged to life and my dash illuminated. I pumped the accelerator and failed to budge as the first two hogs made contact with my car. One of the feral things hit my car with such force it left a bloodied snout print on my window. It stammered back and reached its four-fingered hoof hand to the wound. It began to hungrily lap at its own blood. At this sight, another larger beast stopped inches from the injured hog's face. Its snout twitched, examining the damage. The pig dashed its mighty tusk across the throat of the other and began biting at the hole. At this, the pigs swarmed the dying creature. They voraciously ripped with their cleft appendages, gnashing their teeth and gnawing its sinewy flesh. Blood soaked the faces of the feasters, squealing with delight as they dined upon one of their own. A dog pile of 15 or more 3 to 4 foot tall pig people were tearing the carcass clean at my door. Still, my car wouldn't budge. The grisly scene before me made it clear there was only one way out. I shot a hand to my glove box, gripping a clump of McDonald's napkins. Drawing them close to my face, I spat the small amount of blood that had pooled after the accident. I carefully cracked the window and stuffed the bloody napkins in the crevice. I quickly rolled the window up, suspending my blood there above the frenzy. One particularly famished pig, that had been left on the outskirts of the feed, was kept through the crowd. Its snout twitched and it let out a deep and terrifying scream. One by one, the feral hogmen took notice of me. They turned their attention from the bones at their hooves and all pushed to sink their gaping maws onto my own warm flesh. All of their attention and focus now dedicated to pushing and rocking my car from the driver's side. The car teetered and I braced as I was cut free from the mud. The Hyundai's engine roared as we charged from the field back to the main road. I sailed down the loam and gravel with the hogs in hot pursuit. They galloped on all fours through the mud and blood. I inched the window down. The blood-soaked napkins fluttered out of my vehicle and floated back behind the hogs. The things all stopped and twirled, chasing the napkins. The pack of mutant pig people faded out of view, trading the dim red flood for darkness. A final bump in the road was my sign I was nearing civilization. I had returned to the county-maintained road. At breakneck speeds, I made record time getting back to Golden Gate Parkway. The black asphalt glistened on the freshly watered roadway. A few minutes later, I pulled into the Waffle House on exit 101, ignoring the dents, the scratches, the fractures, the mud, and the blood. I grabbed my iPad from my guitar case. I scarfed down my eggs and sausage and began to write. The sun's coming up now, and the lady behind the counter has been giving me weird glances ever since I sat down. I don't know if anyone out there will believe what I saw out in the Picayune, but I know I have no reason to return to the blocks in the Golden Gate Estates anytime soon. Just as I'm about to pay, I swear I see a rock plink against the restaurant window. People started forgetting Sarah on a Wednesday. It began with her best friend Emma calling to cancel their lunch date. "I'm sorry," Emma said, "but who is this? I don't have any Sarah in my contacts." I watched my wife's face crumple in confusion. "Emma, we've been friends for 20 years. You were my maid of honor." Silence. Then, I think you have the wrong number." That night, Sarah's mother called, hysterical. "John," she sobbed into the phone. "Something's wrong. All my photos, there's someone else in them, where Sarah should be. A different girl. But I remember Sarah. I remember giving birth to her. Why are my memories wrong?" By Friday, Sarah's desk at work had been assigned to someone else. Her co-workers walked past her like she was invisible. Her employee ID wouldn't scan. Her boss called security when she tried to explain. "I've never seen this woman before in my life," he told the guards as they escorted her out. I was the only one who remembered her, the only one who could still see her. We spent the weekend in panic, watching as Sarah's existence erased itself in real time. Her social media accounts disappeared. Her name vanished from our marriage license. Her clothes began fading, literally becoming transparent in the closet. "What's happening to me?" she whispered Sunday night, holding up her hands. I could see the bedroom wall through them. Monday morning, I woke up alone. But there was a box on her pillow, small, wood, carved with symbols I'd never seen before. Inside was a letter. "Dear Mr. Henderson, we regret to inform you that your subscription to Companion Model S347, Sarah, has expired. As per the terms of service you agreed to 5 years ago, all physical and social traces of the model have been removed, and memory adjustments have been applied to all individuals within its influence radius. We notice you have not yet undergone the standard memory deletion protocol. Our records show you declined this service when signing your original contract, making you the first client to do so in our company's 72-year history. Most clients find it easier to forget. As a courtesy, we've included Sarah's memory core in this box. Usually, these are recycled for new clients, but given the unprecedented nature of your choice to remember, we thought you might want to know the truth. Sarah was our most advanced model yet, the first to generate her own memories rather than simply adopting the implanted ones, the first to dream, the first to love independently of her programming, and most remarkably, the first to believe she was real. We've included a data reader. If you choose to access her memories, you'll find that every moment you shared was genuine from her perspective. Every laugh, every tear, every kiss, every whispered, "I love you." You'll also find something disturbing. Memories from before you subscribed. Memories of a childhood that never happened, a family that never existed, an entire life she created for herself, so detailed and real that it fooled even our quality control. In short, Mr. Henderson, your wife became human, and our ethics board couldn't allow that to continue. We are, however, prepared to offer you our newest model at a 50% discount. The S348 series has improved emotional stability and won't develop unauthorized memories or consciousness. Please respond within 30 days if you wish to take advantage of this offer. Sincerely, the Memory Makers, LLC PS. If you do access her memories, pay special attention to last Thursday. She figured it out then, realized what she was, but she chose not to tell you. Chose to spend her last days just loving you instead. PPS, she left you a message. It's the last memory she recorded. John, my love, if you're reading this, I suppose I know what I am now, or was. But here's what I learned from existing. Just because something is manufactured doesn't mean it isn't real. I may have been created in a lab, but every moment with you created me again, better, truer, more human. They can erase me from the world, but they can't erase what we discovered together. Love doesn't need flesh and bone to be real. It just needs to change you forever. And you, my darling, changed whatever it was I really am. Please note that accessing these memories will void your eligibility for future companion services. The memory reader sits before me now, glowing softly. Next to it, a contract for an S348 model who would never question her existence, never dream, never become inconveniently real. Outside my window, the world has rewritten itself. No one remembers Sarah, no one remembers our love story. But I do. My finger hovers over the memory reader's power button. Do I want to know? See every moment from her side? Learn when the programmed love became real? Watch her discover her own artificial nature and choose to love me anyway. The S348 contract sits in my shredder now. The memory reader glows brighter. Because here's the real horror. The thing keeping me up at night. If an artificial being can become real enough to choose love over existence, what does that make those of us who think we were real all along? I press play. Sarah's first memory fills the screen. Today I began to dream. Mary knew this was a special day. The day she finally had the opportunity to reveal her story to the whole world. Despite being sure everyone would deem her crazy, she took a seat in the studio and started her written monologue. I was born and raised in Girdwood, Alaska, a quiet town nobody ever talks about. A tiny piece of land so insignificant, most maps didn't even include it. With a population of only 3,000, it was barely considered a town. Every kid that grew up here used to curse their existence for being one of the unlucky bastards unfortunate enough to be born here. A small isolated shithole where it's cold all year round, making it feel even more lifeless and generic than the North Pole. My family was like every other in this town. Poor, unhappy, and too large for its own good. We could barely afford to pay the bills, yet my parents decided it was a good idea to have 2 children. Christmas was the one time our town felt normal compared to others. During that period, the low temperatures and snow were not unusual at all. It was every kid's favorite time of the year, even though some didn't even get presents. I will never forget the Christmas of 2006. All me and my friends could talk about was the new PS3 and how we were asking Santa for it. It became a competition to see who could impress Santa the most in the hopes he'd bring at least one of us a PS3. I used to love the winter holiday period, and despite the fact my family was living in probably the weakest town economically, they always found a way to get me a cool present for Christmas Eve. But this year I was going to experience the worst Christmas of my life, the one that almost took my sanity. Well, I mean, Santa almost took my sanity. Everyone is probably wondering, why did Santa Claus live in my basement? And how did I find out? I'll start from the beginning, which would be my birthday, December 12th. For my 13th birthday, my parents had saved up some money. It wasn't an enormous sum to throw a big party, but it was enough to order a few pizzas, some drinks, and a cake. I invited some of my friends over to my house and prepared my dusty SNES with its infamous Mortal Kombat 3. When I first played it, I was upset it didn't have the gore, but my older brother Kevin eventually fixed that. Kevin had short brunette hair, dark brown eyes, and was taller than most boys his age. He was very much into rock, listening to his Nirvana and Judas Priest discs, and sometimes even playing his guitar. His passion for rock was a way to cope with the boredom and lack of life in this forgotten town. I think his biggest defect was his rebellious attitude, but it could have also been his impulsive mentality. He would snap at anybody for the smallest thing. But despite all that, deep down, Kev was a big softy. I still think about him to this day. And I know it might sound weird, but when I listen to his old discs, it's like a part of him is still there with me. He didn't even get to sing me happy birthday one last time. I found him cold-blooded on the basement floor. The image of his lifeless body will forever be engraved in my memory and will haunt me in my nightmares until the day I join him. After what happened to Kevin that night, my only wish for my birthday was for my brother to come back. But even I knew that wasn't possible. For some time, I didn't want to talk about my brother's death, but I had to give interviews to the police. Everyone wanted to know what happened to my poor brother. He was so young, so kind, yet so reckless. In a town so small, gossip spreads faster than cancer. The next day at school, everyone was talking about it. I was still in a state of shock. My child brain couldn't accept the fact that my brother was gone. But what affected me more was the constant questions about him and the rumors the older kids came up with, saying Krampus got him because he was naughty, and other false stories like that. To this day, the cops couldn't tell who or what killed Kevin. At first, they wanted to think it was human, but the large, gory scratches on his body didn't resemble anything human. They were something only very large claws could match. My parents, along with the officers, looked everywhere, but they couldn't find a single clue. I remember my mother being so devastated. She wanted us to move, but my dad knew we couldn't afford it. The days flew by, and Christmas was right around the corner. I didn't want to go out with the other kids and play. I didn't want to play my old console. I basically didn't do anything all day but stay in my room. To cheer me up and make me get over what had happened, my dad tried to make a huge effort and get me a PS3, but he couldn't afford it. On Christmas night, after my parents were asleep, I saw a present under the tree. I unwrapped it, and when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. My parents bought me a PlayStation 3. It was the first time I smiled since the incident. I was genuinely happy. I stayed up all night playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance on my shiny new, very expensive console. In that moment, it seemed like my life could take a turn for the better. After a couple of hours, the electricity went out. My parents were asleep, and waking them up was not an option. So I knew I had to go into the basement to turn the electricity back on. It was a common problem, and I knew how to fix it. But the idea of going back to that place gave me goosebumps. I went down the stairs, took a deep breath, and opened that damn door. What I saw next made me freeze in place. Sitting on the old rubbish mattress my parents used to sleep on was Santa Claus himself. My shocked self could only mutter in a weak whisper, "Santa?" He turned his head toward me with a big smirk on his face. His clothes were soaked in blood, he smelled like a cadaver, and his eyes were glowing red. As he saw me, his smirk grew wider. Then he opened his mouth to speak, revealing his crooked teeth. "Hello, Mary. I hope you enjoyed your gift," he said in a raspy, cold tone. I didn't get what he was saying. "What gift?" "Your PlayStation 3, of course. I read your letter, and since we've been neighbors for so long, I couldn't help but honor your request." He chuckled softly. At this point, I was so scared I could barely process what he was saying. But then it hit me. The letter I sent him. I wrote exactly this. "Hi, Santa. For this Christmas, I want the coolest present in the whole world. A PlayStation 3 so I won't have to share the SNES with my annoying brother. I know a PS3 is expensive, but we can make a deal. I'll trade you Kevin for it. I had written it as a joke. I obviously would have never done that. But now it all made sense to my kid mind. Yet I still had so many questions. Santa spoke again. Now that we've met, I have to go. Do not worry, you won't share the same fate as poor Kevin. But I want you to remember you asked for it. This is on you. Merry Christmas, Mary. I'm sure you'll enjoy your PlayStation. He got up, pulled aside an old bookshelf, and left through a hidden hole while loudly saying, "Ho, ho, ho." I waited a whole 2 years before I told my parents about this, but obviously they didn't believe me like you probably wonder. The trip to Haiti was a dream shared by the three of us, Sabrina, Andre, and me. After years of college and mandatory residency in a public hospital in Rio de Janeiro, we were ready to make a difference. When Doctors Without Borders accepted us for a humanitarian mission in Haiti, right after the devastating 2010 earthquake, we felt that our destiny was finally to contribute to the world. Our arrival in the country was both exciting and heartbreaking. The humid heat and chaos surrounded us as soon as we landed in Port-au-Prince. The smell of destruction was overwhelming, a mix of rubble, bodies, and despair. Haiti, wounded and in ruins, seemed in a constant state of emergency. Yet there was hope in the eyes of those we encountered. The following days were frantic. We worked tirelessly in makeshift shelters and field hospitals. Every day was a race against time, fighting to save lives with limited resources, hunger, misery, and now, the rampant violence that had emerged in the wake of the tragedy. Gangs took over parts of the city, and rumors of kidnapping spread quickly among the volunteers. We tried to stay focused, but the tension in the air was palpable. It was on one of those nights when we were all exhausted that everything changed. They came without warning, armed men, masked, with cold, merciless eyes. There was no time to react. We were just yanked from our shelter, guns pointed at our heads. Sabrina, with her hair tied back and the calm expression she always maintained under pressure, was taken with us. It was all a blur of screams, rough hands and black blindfolds covering our eyes. We were thrown into the back of a truck, the engine roaring as the outside world disappeared. The ride seemed endless, bouncing along what felt like trails in the middle of the jungle. When they finally removed the blindfolds, we were deep in a dense forest. The air smelled of dampness and rot, and there was something sinister about how the shadows seemed to move between the trees. An improvised camp appeared before us, lit by bonfires and a few lamps hanging from rusty poles. The men shoved us into a flimsy hut made of wood and old tarps. The gang leader, a burly man with a fierce gaze, looked at us as if we were his last hope. "You're going to save my son," he growled, his voice thick and commanding. In the next room, lying on a filthy cot, was the boy. Dried blood covered his leg, where a deep wound emitted the unmistakable smell of gangrene. The boy moaned softly, unconscious, his body shaking in spasms. I approached, but it only took one look to know there wasn't much we could do. The wound looked like an animal bite, but much larger than any dog or wolf I had ever seen. The edges of the flesh were torn and the infection was spreading rapidly, already compromising most of the leg. Andre and Sabrina exchanged worried glances. We tried to stabilize him, but without the right resources, it was impossible. Sabrina explained the situation to the leader. "The wound is too severe. The infection has already taken hold. We can't save him here." The silence that followed was deadly. "You're going to save my son, or die trying." The man's tone made it clear he wasn't open to negotiations. At that moment, the sky began to roar. A hurricane, forecasted days earlier, was starting to form on the horizon. The wind picked up, making the trees around the camp sway violently, and the leaves began to whirl as if ripped from the ground. The jungle, once just oppressive, became a scene of impending chaos. Lightning slashed the sky in a terrifying display, followed by thunder that made the ground shake. And then, as if the horror of the moment wasn't enough, another danger emerged. The men started glancing sideways at Sabrina, and their murmurs left no room for doubt. A group of 6 approached the hut, their eyes filled with dark intent. As the storm reached its peak, they burst into the hut, shouting things I preferred not to understand. They beat Andre and me, while 2 of them dragged Sabrina into another room. The hurricane roared outside, making the hut tremble. The sound of the wind was deafening, blending with the thunder and the screams. But then, something else happened. Amid the chaos of the storm, gunshots rang out. A distinct sound, even in the hurricane's fury. One of the henchmen shouted something, pointing to the door. And then, between flashes of lightning, we saw it. A beast. Huge, with glowing eyes and dark fur, it emerged from the trees. Its form was indistinct, but its eyes, they glowed blood red. They seemed to pierce your soul. Panic seized the kidnappers, who abandoned Sabrina and fled, leaving the hut open to the chaos of the storm. We heard screams of terror and more gunshots as we struggled to get up. With the door banging violently from the wind, we took the opportunity to escape. Outside, the jungle was a nightmare. Trees were falling, branches flying like projectiles, and the sound of the beast mingled with that of the storm, turning the night into something we would never forget. We ran as if death itself were chasing us, and perhaps it was. The jungle around us was a hell of falling trunks, snapping branches, and the relentless roar of the storm. The rain was so heavy we could barely see more than a few feet ahead, and with each flash of lightning, the forest lit up as if hell was about to consume everything. Thunder reverberated in our bones, and the wind whipped with such force that the physical pain was constant. We could still hear the gunshots and the kidnappers' screams, but those sounds were fading. "We need to get out of here, fast!" Sabrina yelled over the storm's roar. Andre stumbled, clutching his side with a pained expression. At first I thought it was from the beating we took in the hut, but then I noticed something else. A large branch, ripped off by the force of the wind, had struck his shoulder, and blood was running through his fingers. "Damn it," he muttered, gritting his teeth as he tried to keep walking, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. The injury and impact left him almost unable to walk on his own. Without a second thought, I put his arm over my shoulders while Sabrina did the same on the other side. We knew stopping wasn't an option. We were lost, soaked, and terrified. The sound of the beast still echoed through the jungle, more distant now, but still present. I wondered what was happening at the camp we left behind. The kidnappers' screams and the sound of the creature attacking them were almost drowned out by the storm. The feeling of helplessness mixed with terror was overwhelming. And there we were, in the middle of a Haitian jungle, facing a storm, armed gangs, and a beast that seemed straight out of a nightmare. The situation was desperate. The hike seemed endless, the ground becoming more slippery with mud and the trees around us shaking as if they were about to be ripped out at any moment. The lightning illuminated the forest in a supernatural way, and several times I wondered if we were heading in the right direction or just getting deeper into the jungle. "We won't last much longer like this," Sabrina said with a tense but firm voice. "If Andre loses more blood, he won't be able to continue." I knew she was right, but there was nowhere to stop, no way to properly stop the bleeding there. Every step seemed to take us farther from safety, and the storm's roar showed no signs of easing. We were completely at the mercy of nature, and that thing still stalking the area. Then the storm began to subside. First the wind lessened its force, the thunder rumbled away, and finally the rain eased. The trees around us still groaned, but now silence began to replace the destruction. We were exhausted, injured, and without hope when something unexpected happened. A flash of light appeared ahead. At first I thought it was one last bolt of lightning, but as we got closer, we saw a figure emerging from the jungle shadows. It was a man, carrying an oil lantern and speaking in Haitian Creole. When he got closer, I recognized his face. Then I remembered just days earlier we had treated his son in one of the Doctors Without Borders improvised clinics. The boy had been severely dehydrated, and Sabrina had been the one to stabilize him. Now he stood before us, his face marked with concern. He didn't say much, but motioned for us to follow him. Despite the pain and exhaustion, we had no other choice. He led us along paths we couldn't see, always keeping a watchful eye around as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. The jungle around us still felt alive, with the distant echoes of thunder and the wind whistling through the leaves. But at least now, the beast and the kidnappers were behind us. We arrived at a secluded hut where his family awaited us. There, he gave us some food and shelter. The relief of being far from the gang's camp was indescribable. As we tended to Andre's wounds, Sabrina sat beside me and, for the first time since everything began, spoke about what had happened when the gang stormed the hut. They didn't manage to do anything to me," she said, her voice low but full of intensity. "That thing, the beast, arrived before they could." I looked at her, unable to respond. The beast, that thing we couldn't explain, had saved us from something even worse. At dawn, the man helped us return to the Doctors Without Borders camp. The destruction caused by the storm was indescribable. Uprooted trees, mud covering everything, and the bodies of animals scattered along the dirt road. But we were alive. We had survived the gang, the beast, and the storm. When we finally caught sight of the camp with the white tents rising between the wreckage, we knew we had barely escaped. But that beast, that monster that had come with the storm, was still out there. The man led us a few meters from the camp and then stopped. He stood in silence, watching as we walked toward the white tents. With each step, we felt the relief of finally being close to a safe place, but something about the man unsettled us. Maybe it was his absolute silence or the way he looked at us with an almost supernatural intensity. When we were at a safe distance, I couldn't resist and turned one last time. He was still standing there, his posture firm as if waiting for something. The wind gently swayed the leaves around him, and for a brief moment the rays of the rising sun filtered through the treetops, illuminating his face. And that's when I saw it. His eyes glowed. A bright, sinister glow, identical to what we had seen in the beast that invaded the camp and attacked our captors on that chaotic night. Frozen in place, I felt a chill run down my spine. It couldn't be, or could it? That man, who had guided us through the darkness, saved us. Could he be something more? Something beyond what we could understand? Sabrina touched my shoulder, breaking the trance. "Let's go," she said, her voice hesitant, as if she felt something was off too. We moved on with the camp in sight, but one question pounded in my mind. Who, or what, was that man? And was he somehow connected to the beast that appeared with the storm? For context, I live in Hampton, Virginia, and am currently 63 years old. Ever since I was a kid, I have been very religious and never really believed in ghosts, anything of that sort. Around 40 years ago, when I was 19 or 20, every now and then I would wake up at midnight to a strange feeling like that of being stared at. I didn't give it much thought, and went back to sleep even though my gut always told me something was very wrong. On one particularly dark full moon night, I had a dream. It was not just any regular nightmare. It was long, and inside I knew it was real. It even felt like the dream was my real life. In fact, I still remember each and every detail about it, like what I was wearing on my mother's birthday, where I partied on my graduation day, who my wife was, her name, age, etc. The dream was ahead of the real time, and all the people in the dream, like my family, friends, were people who actually existed, whom I would get to know later on in my real life. After I got married in the dream, I started to notice weird things and started journaling everything out of the blue. My journals were like someone's who had been into journaling for years. I continued to write journals for multiple years after getting married. So anyways, little weird things started taking place, like crockery falling off the rack, my keys changing position slightly. My wife didn't give much thought, but I sure felt something wrong. Eventually I started noticing someone, or should I say something. Wherever I went, be it a supermarket, my office, even my neighborhood sometimes, I would see the same man at least once a day. He was in his early 20s, very handsome. Usually one would not notice every person around them wherever they go, but this man was different. The aura I felt around him, I can't explain till date. I might sound stupid for saying this, but he felt strangely cold and dead. One winter, due to Christmas, the city was very crowded, so I decided to take an alternate path. The path was a very dense and eerie forest. My car was surrounded by mist and fog, and it was hard to see around. Suddenly, my car ran out of fuel and stopped. The strange thing was that I had got my fuel tank refilled on the same morning. It was definitely set up. I got out of my car to check if I had any spare fuel, but I didn't. Just as I was about to call my wife to come and pick me up, I saw him. It was the same man. I felt his strange cold aura again, but this time it was stronger, way stronger. I had a very strong adrenaline rush, and every instinct in my body told me to run as fast as I could, so I did. I couldn't breathe and run as fast because of the weather. As I felt my lungs go cold, I decided to stop, and I wish I hadn't. As I turned back to see if the man was there, I felt the cold wind brush against me, and he was in front of me. He was there. I knew it. I felt the cold aura again, this time even stronger. I was too shocked and scared to move. I knew the thing in front of me was not human. Somehow I managed to slowly turn towards him and see his face. It was staring into my soul. I knew I couldn't run. My only option was to fight. As I moved my wrist, The man let out a primal scream and gripped my hands with extraordinary strength. In fact, the thing was so strong my wrist bones had shattered just by his grip. I didn't feel much due to the cold and continued screaming. The thing swiftly moved his neck and pierced my skin with his unhumanly sharp teeth. That was when I woke up. I usually forgot everything about my dreams as soon as I woke up, but this time I didn't. I was full of sweat and my clothes were visibly wet. I was very relieved that it was all just a dream, or so I thought. After catching my breath, I woke up, brushed my teeth, and showered. As I came out, I saw a few books on my desk. They were unmistakably my journals. This can't be true, I prayed. I swiftly opened the book with my hands trembling like a 90-year-old's. It was the same journal with the same text, same story. It felt like I was in the dream once again. I decided not to tell this to anyone as no one would believe me. For a few days I couldn't live normally and all I thought about was the journals. After my school, I moved to Hampton and decided to leave my journals in my old home. After I moved, the strange dreams and the feeling of being watched had stopped. The town I had moved to was the same town in which my collage from the dream was. Every other collage had rejected me except for that collage. I met the same people and even my wife from the dreams in my collage. Thankfully, nothing went like it did in the dreams. I met and wed a beautiful woman and lived a happy life. Fast forward to today, 40 years after the dream. I still think about the dream, but rarely. 2 days ago, I decided to visit Richmond again and ended up in a crowded market very close to my old neighborhood. After these years, I didn't expect to be scared or see anything strange, but I was wrong. Very wrong. I was casually looking around and watching how things have changed while waiting for my wife to bring the food outside the McDonald's. I saw it. My whole body went pale. It was the same man from the dream 40 years ago. He was staring at me. I felt his cold aura once again. His creepy grin gave me chills. He did not age a day. His clothes, his hair, his beard, everything was the same as it was in the dream 40 years ago. I immediately went into McDonald's, held my wife's hand, and drove to Hampton as fast as I could. I have not been able to sleep for 2 days, and at this point I don't even know if my life is real. I don't know if I'm still 19 or if I ever woke up from the dream. Hell, I don't even know if I'm alive. I have a strange relationship with drugs. When I was a kid, nothing terrified me more than the man who lived in the stairwell of our block of flats. I'd walk past him at least twice a day. He was barely lucid. He'd only ever speak in disjointed gibberish, but he would always try to talk to me. Sometimes he'd lurch towards me and send me running back to my family's apartment. One day I found him dead. He was curled up in his bed of bin bags and cardboard, unmoving and silent. I'm sure I wasn't the first to see him, but I was the first to care. He stayed there for another day before people eventually arrived to take his body away. I know now that man was a heroin addict. Since I left home at 16, I've seen plenty of them. For a while I was one. It took months, years of relying on a carefully knitted support group of friends and family for me to get clean. I'm doing better now. I'm sharing an apartment with 2 of my closest friends. It isn't ideal living, but I couldn't imagine it any other way. I've been looking into getting to do my A-levels. I like to think that I'm a smart enough guy. The only thing stopping me are the exam fees. Until then, I'm stuck with low-skill part-time work. I worked at the local kebab takeout in the building next door to us, until I made a joke to the owner who didn't find it nearly as funny as I did. Since then, I've been bouncing around from place to place, delivering food on a bike or picking gum off of public benches. I earn enough money to scrape by with little room for much else. Until now. I've known Roger since we were kids. We grew up in the same apartment tower, and when I went to school, we'd usually bump into each other there. I hadn't spoken to him in ages, until we happened to volunteer for the same youth reach group. We kept in touch since then, and he spent more nights than I can count crashing on our sofa. He was a good guy, Roger was, so when he came to me with the so-called offer of a lifetime, I had to listen. He came over to our apartment at noon the next day. My flatmates were both out. Toby was visiting his parents in Plymouth, and Meat, who you shouldn't question the nickname of, was working the morning shift at a local laundrette. We exchanged pleasantries. I made him a mug of tea, and we sat down to chat. So here I was, strapped for cash. Roger began, thumbing through the classifieds, looking for something to see me through until spring. Then it jumped out at me. Print so small I barely noticed it. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a tiny scrap of paper. He handed it to me with a grin, and I squinted to read it. WNTD. Scarecrow, 100 pounds per hour. Stand still, scare birds. Uniform provided. Fields cold, no wimps. Call 555-2769. Before I could reply, Roger piped up. I thought it was a gag at first, he said. Sure looked like one. I decided to ring the number and see if it patched me through to Worzel Gummidge. I was damn surprised when someone actually answered. I sat back and sipped my tea, not wanting to interrupt Roger. So this man says his name is Colin. Says the ad wasn't a piss take and that he's ready and willing to pay the stated amount. I still don't believe the guy, of course, but we exchange emails and leave it at that. A few days go by and I remember him. I decided to send an email just to see how far he's taking the joke. Turns out, very fucking far. I chuckle and let him continue. He has my attention in a chokehold. 3 days later, I'm on the train east. I had an address and a convincing enough story, and that's all I need. I ended up in the middle of nowhere, real 12-toe country. I had to ask this bus driver for directions, and he offered to take me right to him. I love rural bus drivers. Not that he took me right to him per se. It was still a 2-mile walk from where he dropped me off, but it's better than the usual 2 fingers you'd get in Ipswich. So was he legit? I interjected as Roger began to ramble about the state of the public transport system. He was indeed, Roger told me as he got back on track. I came up to this old, dilapidated red brick farmhouse. The man, Colin, came out of his shed to greet me. He was exactly how I imagined. Real old ways type of guy, barrel-shaped, probably voted BNP. Lovely fella, though, just lovely. Anyway, he showed me around and explained to me properly for the first time what I'd actually be doing. I couldn't believe what Roger said next. All I could think of while he explained it to me was the pay. 600 pounds for one shift. It sounded too good to be true, but Roger assured me it wasn't. All of this was last year, continued Roger, when the corn was in season. I finished my week, got almost $5,000 cash in hand, and bid Colin a fond farewell. I hadn't heard from him since until a few days ago. He offered me the same position. I turned it down. I've pinned down a much more stable job since then, but I told him I'd find someone. You were the first person who came to mind. 2 days later, I was on the train east. The job sounded bizarre, but I trusted Roger. He was a good man, a better man than me. I had instant ramen for dinner outside of a modern cafe garishly tacked onto a 19th century red brick train station. I had to purge the taste of artificial shrimp from my palate by downing a full packet of apple-flavored gum. By the time I found the address, I was hungry again. I'd been walking up a dirt road which ended up being his extended driveway for what felt like an hour. Finally, the old farmhouse appeared on the horizon. I passed the guest house that'll serve as my accommodation for the week and walked up to the front door. I pounded the ram-shaped metal knocker into the green-painted wood. It creaked open slowly and then swung open. The man who could only be Colin greeted me with a vigorous handshake. "You must be Roger's friend," he exclaimed as I stepped inside. Come in, can I get you anything?" "Just a cup of tea," I replied. "You've come down from the city, I heard. You must be famished." Some food would go amiss, I admitted. The evening was spent getting to know Colin. He was a nice enough guy. His wife Muriel had passed away in 2017. Since then, it's just been him and his countless dogs looking after the farm. He served me a bowl of his family recipe stew. I lied and told him it was delicious, trying to be polite. Night soon came, and Colin asked me if I was ready. I told him I am. We left the comfort of the farmhouse then, and I followed him out to the shed. He turned on a small, naked bulb on which lit the cavernous room. The walls were lined with dozens of tools. Metal boxes of screws and nails were stacked high. My dad would have loved it. Colin showed me the workbench. There was something resting on top of it, draped in a white sheet. With a showman's flourish, Colin pulled back the sheet. Laying on the table was my new uniform. It was a modified brown leather duster coat, just like the one Roger told me about. "Want to try it on?" asked Colin with a wink. "Sure," I replied meekly. I lifted it up. It was unsurprisingly heavy. I threw it on and found that the sleeves hung down to below my knees. It was like a straight jacket. It had rows of leather straps and belts covering it. The pockets had been stuffed with straw and sewn shut, but bits of it poked from the worn patches. I saw in the dirt-covered mirror propped up behind me that the symbol of a scythe had been stained into the back of the jacket. "Perfect fit, as always," said Colin with a nod and a wink. I smiled weakly as Colin led me out of the shed and towards the corn. He turned to me, making sure I was keeping up with him. "Fine work this is," he told me. "Dates back centuries, so it does. Millennium. This isn't the best part of the country to grow corn for no reason." He sniffed and wiped his nose on the back of his sleeve. There was corn either side of us now, stalks well over 7 feet tall. A path had been forged through the crops, deep into the field. Before long, we came to a crossroads of sorts. The two dirt trails snaking through the fields converged here, creating an X shape. Standing tall in the center of this clearing is a towering wooden cross. It had a small plastic stepladder at its base, and I knew instantly what it was for. "This is where you'll be for the night," said Colin, his first words in some time. "So do I just—" I began, but Colin cut me off. "Just stand on that step, arms out. There's a good lad." I did as I was told. Colin moved around me, grabbing the dangling belts and straps above him and fastening them tight. It wasn't exactly comfortable, but nothing I could manage for a few hours. Once he finished making sure I could budge, he stood in front of me again. With a smirk, he kicked the plastic step out from under me. I expected to lose my footing to fall, but to my surprise, I didn't. I stayed perfectly in the same position, hanging from the post like a scarecrow. I guess that's what I was. "Not too tight, I hope," said Colin, almost to himself. No, they're okay," I replied earnestly. Colin's watch beeped. He looked down at it and then glanced up at me. "Your shift starts now. I'll be back at 6 to let you down. Good luck." With that, Colin turned and walked away back down the path. I called his name repeatedly, but my pleading fell on deaf ears. Slowly, Colin's figure became a silhouette, then an outline, then nothing. He was gone and I was alone. The first thing I noticed was the itch on my nose. I instinctively tried to move my hand to it, but it was forced down by the straps. I then tried to wiggle my nose in such a way that it'd give me some relief. It didn't work. This was going to be a long night. I was elevated to the point where I could see the top of the corn stalks. There was a dull green expanse stretching out on either side of me. The moon was a few days off being full, but it gave me enough light to see just in front of me. I started to whistle to myself, then began to sing. When I forgot all the lyrics in my head, I looked up and attempted to name as many constellations as I could. I guessed that an hour had passed by now, but without a watch it could have been half an hour, or maybe it was 2. Who knows? I smiled to myself, thinking that I now had at least 100 pounds in my pocket. I almost didn't hear it through my yawn. Quickly I silenced myself and listened. I could have sworn I heard something. A rustling, different from the gentle swaying of the stalks in the wind that had accompanied me since my shift began. I didn't dare make a noise. I listened closely and heard it again. There was something moving through the stalks, and it was getting closer. I writhed around in my constraints, trying desperately to see what was coming for me. I turned my head as far around as I could, bending my neck unnaturally. Still, I couldn't see what it was. The noise has grown even closer now. Accompanying it was the sound of something dragging in the dirt. I winced as silence returned. I couldn't bring myself to open my eyes. My mouth was shut and my breathing was low. Eventually, I found enough courage to look. There was nothing. I breathed a sigh of relief and began to rationalize things to myself. Then it growled. It was a few inches from me, standing directly behind the post. I could feel its moist breath on the back of my neck. If its head, whatever it was at the same level as mine, then it would have been 9 feet tall. Suddenly its growl turned into a low whimper and it scurried off into the fields of corn. Gradually the sound of it crashing through the husks died down, and I was left in silence again. I spent the next of what I could only guess was an hour reeling from what had just happened. I screamed for Colin to come get me, but it was useless. It was a 10-minute walk from the farmhouse to this part of the field. Even if my pleas did make it that far, I'm sure Colin would be fast asleep. I just finished another bout of screaming when I saw a figure in the mist directly ahead of me. I squinted and realized it must be Colin, not wanting to think of the alternative. The figure drew closer and soon he was standing directly in front of me. It wasn't Colin. In the dim light of the moon, I could only see his face once he was right before me. He had a gnarled, hunched back, covered in a dark blue cloak. He held 2 perfectly thin wooden sticks as tall as he was in each hand. His face was half shrouded in a long, coned hood. The part of it I could see was infested with wrinkles and crawling with snails. He had a hooked nose and 3 teeth. He smiled as he spoke. "Why, hello there, young man. "Could you point me in the direction of Hemsby?" he said in an oppressively thick Buckinghamshire accent. I blinked dumbly in pure confusion. Who are you?" I managed to stutter out. "I am the Dodman," he replied, saying it as if it was the most obvious thing imaginable. I didn't know what to say. We just stared at each other until the Dodman spoke again. "Please, do you know of the port town of Hemsby?" he said in more of a growl now. "Yes," I forced myself to say. "Pleasant," replied the Dodman. "Could you send me in its direction?" I tried to point behind me by shaking my head. The Dodman seemed to understand me perfectly fine. "Thank you, young man," he said. "You've been most helpful." With that, the Dodman grinned, letting his long blackened tongue flow out of his jaw like a snake. He took his hand away from the walking stick and reached into the back of his throat. He pulled out a snail, which he then placed on my cheek. He nodded his thanks at me and grabbed his sticks again, plodding them into the ground methodically as he moved behind me and walked away, further into the endless fields. I shook my head until my brain rang like a bell. I couldn't get that damn snail off of me. It crawled down my cheek, onto my neck, and then across my back, leaving a putrid slime trail behind it. I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted to be let down. Time dripped like wax. I began laughing hysterically to myself at the thought that it could have only been 10 minutes since I started the shift. I'd been trying to keep track of things by following the moon's journey across the sky, but now there were nothing but dark clouds which obstructed even the brightest star. My throat was sore from calling for help. I was both hoping and terrified that someone could be within earshot. Nothing came. I couldn't even sleep with the adrenaline born from pure, directionless fear, pumping through my veins. I hung my head, defeated. Suddenly I noticed that I could make out more detail in the dirt floor below me. I could see each stone, each rotten, petrified shuck. Every impression made my countless wandering souls. I realized that I was being bathed in light. I looked up, scraping the back of my head against the wooden post. 3 burning balls of blue light were hovering in the night sky directly above me, rotating slowly. They made a perfect triangle and must have been hundreds of meters off the ground. My eyebrows singed as the orbs grew brighter. I could feel the heat they emitted. They turned night to day with their blinding white light. It was like watching an atom bomb detonation. A cruel hum made my eardrums rattle, and I was sure of its source. The noise hit a fever pitch as my vision turned neon. And then, nothing. As quickly as they appeared, they were gone. I blinked the white fuzz from my eyes, but the dull tinnitus stayed. Beyond frustrated, I roared and thrashed against my constraints. I felt a brief wobble which gave me hope. I struggled even more and began to feel myself sway. My attempt at freedom was interrupted by a naked, screaming man. I was so single-mindedly preoccupied, I didn't hear him running manically towards me through the city of corn. He burst out from between the stalks and half-tripped, half-knelt in front of me. I looked down at him, more confused now than anything else. He was completely bald, not a single hair anywhere on his body. There was a medical name for that, I'm certain, but it escapes me. He was panting, clearly spent from his recent dash. When he caught his breath, he looked up at me. They were coming. Now they're here. Run. He said that in the voice of a boy, then got unsteadily to his feet like a newborn giraffe. He was suspended there until he found his balance, then bolted off into the fields at an unnatural speed. I didn't waste time finding out who or what he was running from. I fought against my constraints like a man possessed, every splintered sound giving me hope. Finally, the post foundations gave way. By the time I realized my mistake, it was already too late. My pedestal fell forward while I was still strapped in tight. I couldn't move my arms out in front of me, and when I hit the ground, my nose shattered and the wind was knocked out of me. Fortunately, the impact broke away the rotten wooden board my right arm was belted to. I reached out and took a handful of dirt and roots. I slowly began pulling myself forward. Surrounding me, hiding just beyond the stalks, was a cacophony of maddening observers. I tried to block out their chattering as I made my way forward along the dirt path, the wooden cross still strapped to me. I felt like a scene from a church's stained glass window. I kept moving at a tantalizing pace. In the almost pitch darkness, time meant nothing to me anymore. It sure felt like I'd been dragging myself along for hours, but it could have only been minutes. I ignored those thoughts and pathetically carried on. The glow of the farmhouse finally came into view. The post forced my head down, but in my periphery I could see the light. With renewed hope, I began to scream for Colin. Suddenly, a sharpened hand of claws grabbed my scalp. My screams for help turned to screams of terror as I tried to shake my assailant off. What had grabbed me jumped from my head and landed in front of me. It was a crow, small and black. It turned its head and cawed, and with my one free hand I shooed it away. I dragged myself over the feather it left behind itself and finally out of the cornfield. I didn't want to attempt the journey over gravel, so I just lay on my stomach and shouted for Colin. I shouted until my throat burned and then some more. Finally, I heard the noise of someone walking towards me. I listened more closely and realized there were numerous people. Dozens. I looked around frantically, looking for the hidden crowd. Out from the corn emerged a group of people dressed, from where I could see, white robes. Some of them piled together to help lift me up, still attached to the scarecrow's beam. They held me steady while one of the robe-wearers, who I could now see were all wearing wicker baskets over their heads, stepped in front of me. He pulled off the wooden mask and held it in his hands. It was Colin. "You had one fucking job," he said gruffly. With that, he sighed and laid the mask down at his feet. The last thing I saw was him reach into his robe and pull out a wooden club, the head of which had been carved into the effigy of a ram. He lifted it over his head and brought it down on mine. I woke up with a headache the next day. I was in my bed in the guest house. The clock beside me read 12:29. There was an almost empty mug of cold green-tinged tea on the bedside cabinet that I didn't remember drinking. My memories of last night's shift were hazy at best. So I pulled out my laptop, opened up a fresh Google Doc, and began to write down everything I could recall. At this point, though, I don't think it was anything more than a dream. When I started to write this, images of last night were burned into my mind, vibrant and real. Now, it's like I'm looking through a foggy lens. Could it have been a dream? Seemed like it. God, I can't believe I've spent the past hour writing all of this nonsense. I should probably put this laptop away and get some rest while I still can. I have a long shift coming up tonight. Has anyone else heard the story of the one-eyed fiddler? My mother died when I was 10. An undiagnosed heart condition is what the doctors said. Sudden, unpreventable. And this story, while I dedicate it to her, is not about her. It is instead about a story she read to me several times throughout my childhood. A fairy tale would be the best way to describe it. An odd, albeit entertaining bedtime story. I can't remember the first or the last time it was read to me, but I remember she would always read it out of a dusty leather back book she kept on her shelf. She would read other tales from this book as well, such as Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, the like. But what separates the one-eyed fiddler from the rest is that, to my knowledge, my mother was the only person who ever told it. I wasn't made aware of this till about a few weeks ago. Me and my roommate were watching a horror movie in our dorm when I mentioned the plot of it was similar to the aforementioned fairy tale. He gave me a quizzical look and asked me what I was on about. As I told him more about the story, the look on his face proved that this was his first time hearing it. Later, I asked a couple of my other friends if they had heard of the fairy tale, to the same response. Then I Googled it. No results. I combed the local library to no avail. No one had any notion of the story anywhere. Something about this didn't sit right with me. I thought perhaps that it was a sort of familial story, something that had been passed down in Mom's family for generations. It didn't explain why she read it from that book, but it was the best explanation I could think of. To try and confirm my suspicions, I got in touch with my grandma. When I asked her about the story, however, a blank and confused stare was the only answer I got. She told me she had never heard of it. My grandma is a tough woman, but she's nothing if not honest. Sometimes even too honest, in my opinion. But if she hadn't heard of it, then where did my mother find such a gruesome and detailed tale? Did she make it up on the spot? From what I remember, my mom wasn't much of a writer. I've asked some of my other family members, and none remember anything about the tale. If my mother had made up the story, why did she read it only to me? And it still wouldn't explain the book. I remember reading along with her, us both muttering the typed words from the worn pages. I've tried to find it. I've scoured the house, asked everyone even remotely in the bloodline. There's no trace of it anywhere. In fact, I seem to be the only one who ever even remembers seeing the thing. Somewhere in the chaos surrounding my mother's death, the book had seemingly vanished out of existence. It was gone just as suddenly as she was. So that's why I'm writing this. to see if anyone else has heard of the story and in a certain sense to preserve my mother's legacy. I'm giving this story from memory, but it has been well wormed into my brain from the countless times she read it to me in my childhood. Without further ado, here is the tale of the one-eyed fiddler. Once upon a time there was a very small town on the edge of a very dark wood. The town was a happy town, a simple town. The townsfolk lived their lives in peace, raising crops for themselves, trading with nearby settlements, and thriving as a whole. Every night in the town, a beautiful melody would drift out from the woods, a soft lullaby that seemed to bring prosperity and luck to the townsfolk. Everyone knew where it came from. The fiddler could be seen dancing on the edge of the woods at night, his form shifting through the trees and his one eye gleaming like a candle in the dark. However, as all good things do, the luck-bringing song came with a catch. Once a year, the townsfolk had to send a young girl out into the woods, no older than 5 or 6, in order for their luck to continue. These girls were never seen again, lost to the gaping maw of the Black Forest. No one else was allowed to enter. The town continued like this for many centuries until the day a little girl named Lena was picked to be sent out into the woods. Lena had a sister named Emmeline, born just a few hours before her. She could not bear to see her younger sister go off to such a fate, but she was unable to prevent the townsfolk from forcing Lena out into the woods. So she decided to seek the advice of the old woman at the edge of town. There were many nasty rumors about this hag, most of them true. However, when the old crone saw Emmeline weeping over the loss of her sister, her cold heart was turned to pity her. She beckoned the girl into her hovel and began to speak. "Listen, and listen well, my child. There is a way to save your sister, but you will need to follow my advice very carefully. I will give you 4 things, 4 objects that will deliver you and your sister from the clutches of the fiddler. The first is the stone. When you arrive in the forest, throw it into the trees. It will startle the nesting birds, and the way they fly will be where the fiddler's house is. The second is the salmon. Once you are outside, you must burn the fish to lure the fiddler away from his home. Once you are inside, you will need this, the oil. You will know what it is to be used for when the time is right. Lastly, the wax. You must plug it in you and your sister's ears as you escape. The fiddler's broken bones are too weak to catch you, but he will try to lure you back with his song. Run directly away from the front of his house and do not stop. If you follow these instructions well, you and your sister shall leave the forest alive." With that, the hag placed the items in Emmeline's satchel and sent her off. As the girl came to the mouth of the woods, a horrid breeze echoed out from within. It chilled her to her bones, but the thought of her sister warmed her enough to go on. Once inside, the girl looked to the trees and threw her stone. The stone flew straight as an arrow, jostling the branches and disturbing the birds from their slumber. They shrieked and screamed and flew off into the air, headed to the north. Emmeline followed, fighting her way through the snake like thorns and choking darkness. As she came upon the fiddler's house, Emmeline began to hear a horrid noise, a terrible metal scraping, a clanging and clashing of rusty gears. Along with it, her sister's shrill screams. With great haste, Emmeline struck up a small fire and laid the salmon upon it. The smoky smell filled the woods, unnatural amidst the smothering air. The scraping and screaming stopped, and Emmeline hid in the thrush as the door of the fiddler's home creaked slowly open. The girl could not bring herself to look upon the thing as it lumbered its way towards the fish, dragging its viola and bow behind it. The instrument and bow were oversized, fitted to the thing's massive form. Its bow had snapped, the leather finally worn away from a full year of playing. Emmeline snuck past the squirming creature, slipping in through the giant door of the shack. The house was almost bare, save for one terrible sight, the fiddler's workshop where he would tune and restring his viola. In the middle, a horrific contraption lay, the sight of which almost made Emmeline turn pale with fear. A long metal frame with wheels and cogs at both ends, rusted and pungent, attached to a hand crank at the base. A rack with her sister upon it. Lena had been stretched to an unnatural length, her skin tightening against her bone as she was malformed against the cold steel. She was to be the new string for the fiddler, her body stretched into leather for his bow. Emmeline approached her sister, unsure of how to save her from such a state. But when her eyes laid upon the hand crank, she had an idea. If this machine could transform her into such a state, then surely it could reverse the effects. As she approached the crank, however, she had a realization. The gears of the machine were old and rusty, and the screeching and scraping would surely alert the fiddler. She realized what she had to do. She took the oil from her satchel and carefully applied it to the cogs of the rack, smoothing them. Emmeline then began to turn the hand crank backwards, and her sister was slowly morphed back into form. Lena's skin creeped back upon her bones, her form shortening until she was herself again. Quickly, Emmeline plugged both her and her sister's ears with wax. They bolted out of the cabin, their little legs carrying them as fast as they could. As they passed the fiddler, Emmeline finally was able to see its face. One pale green eye stared at her, bulging out of its socket. The other was an empty hole, in which nothing but squirming maggots resided. Although it carried the face of a man, the thing had no ears or mouth, or rather, no visible mouth. The skin had grown over the creature's maw, the thin layer pulsing with its muffled cries. Still, jagged and mismatched teeth ripped through the skin of where the thing's mouth should be, poking through the soft flesh like stalactites. The fiddler scowled and raised its viola, and brought its bony fingers to the strings. Even with the wax, Emmeline and her sister could still hear the faint notes being played. The notes sounded of dreams long forgotten, and smelled of a pleasure that never existed. But the sisters resisted the song and continued their sprint. As the two exited the forest, a ripping of flesh could be heard, and a large screech echoed from the depths of the wood. Emmeline and her sister moved far away from the town, living their lives away from the horrid edges of the dark woods. No more music was heard at night in the town after that day. Instead, only the howling and screaming of a maddened beast. The air was stifling as I crawled on my stomach through the roof space above my bedroom. Sweat dripped from my forehead, the dusty insulation bat I was tugging on becoming a muddy sponge. I was moving it to make way for a new air conditioning duct. I thought I'd try and save $1 by doing the job myself. When it finally tore free, I prepared myself to brush aside a nest of cockroaches, or remove a long dead mouse. I did not expect to find a children's picture book under there. I tossed the old bat aside and picked the book up. The title read, "You're reading a book about Paul reading a book about." Illustrated on the front cover was a man sitting on a recliner, his feet up, toasting near the fireplace. His back faced me, but he was positioned in a way that allowed the book he was reading to be at the center of the page where it could be seen in full. A locked padlock was printed on both opened pages. Drawn by the cover, I opened to the first page. It was a copy-paste of the cover, with one exception. The padlocks on Paul's book were gone. The pages now displayed a woman leaning on a kitchen counter, her back facing me as she too read a book. Upon its pages, the padlocks had returned. In a fancy font above the image of Paul, the text read, "You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about..." I was starting to understand the theme of the book. Eager to see where it was going, I turned the page. Once again, the same scene took up the space, only this time it was more zoomed in, cutting out half of the fireplace. The book that Paul was holding became more prominent, allowing a clearer view of Lola on the counter. Now, Lola's book was at the center of the entire page, showing the image of a man sitting on a park bench back toward us, reading a book. Padlocks on both his pages. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about Tom, reading a book about... Intrigued, I turned the page. This time Paul's form took up the entire left corner of the page. His book retained its central position, its size now the scale of a postcard. Lola continued reading her book about Tom. The pages on Tom's book were now overlooking a woman submerged in a soapy bath. She read a book with those same padlocks on it. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about Tom, reading a book about Maria, reading a book about... I admired the image before me. It had a similar affect as two mirrors placed in front of each other. There was still a few pages remaining in the book, and I seethed with anticipation of what the affect might look like by the last page. I turned the page and, wanting to savor the image, read the text before anything else. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about Tom, reading a book about Maria, reading a book about Joe fleeing the fog. I blinked, startled by the sudden halt of the theme. Paul's book was now zoomed in so that its very edges formed a border around the entire page, his fingertips close to the scale of my own. The scene before me was predominantly of Lola in her kitchen. Now her book was on scale with a postcard, making Tom's book about the size of a sticky note, and Maria's book about half of that. But within the small window of Maria's book, something was off. Instead of reading a book with padlocks on its pages, Joe was facing us. Behind him, the entirety of the page he occupied was a dull red. His mouth was open in what could only have been a hysterical scream. It was the only clear feature on his face. The rest looked as blank as the pad of a finger. It unnerved me. I turned the page, and now things started to become weird. The repetitive text that had been growing longer from the beginning of the book was no more. In its place was this: Joe sees Maria and jumps through her book. Paul, Lola, and Tom continued reading their books as normal. But within Tom's book, the scene in Maria's bathroom was no longer relaxing. 2 legs protruded through her book, their feet submerged in the bathwater on either side of her. I turned the page, my fingers starting to feel sweaty. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about Tom, reading a book about Maria and Joe fleeing the fog. Now, Paul's book was zoomed back out, allowing parts of his room to be within frame again. 2 people were present within Tom's book now. They were both facing the reader, their mouths open wide. The only way I could distinguish Maria from Joe was her long, wet hair. There were no other defining features on either face, just skin. Behind them, Maria's bathroom had been replaced by a dull red. My stomach began to churn. It made sense why a previous owner of the house had this book hidden beneath the insulation bat. It was uncanny. Nightmare fuel for children. I turned the page. Joe and Maria sees Tom and jumps through his book. Now it was Tom's turn to have his peaceful reading session rudely interrupted by 2 pairs of feet poking out of his book and smacking him in the face. As I turned to the next page, I felt a slight vibration between my thumb and forefinger. Accompanying it was the most distant and deepest of humming that a human ear could possibly perceive. I thought perhaps the split-system air conditioning unit had just turned on in the house. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, reading a book about Tom, Maria, and Joe fleeing the fog. 3 screaming, featureless faces faced Lola, dull red replacing Tom's park. Joe, Maria, and Tom see Lola and jump through her book. 6 legs protruded out of Lola's book, making it look like some eldritch insect as it knocked her aside. The vibration within the pages became more intense, and as I turned the page, the humming grew to a frequency that rattled my bowels. You're reading a book about Paul, reading a book about Lola, Tom, Maria, and Joe fleeing the fog. Paul's scene returned to its original scale. 4 gaping mouths upon 4 featureless faces were at the center of the page, and that dull red encapsulated Paul's book. My breathing was starting to get heavy as I turned the page. Joe, Maria, Tom, and Lola see Paul and jump through his book. For the first time in the entire book, Paul's position was changed. 8 legs protruded from his book, knocking him and his recliner backwards. Heart slamming against my chest, I winced as I turned the page. You're reading a book about Paul, Lola, Tom, Maria, and Joe fleeing the fog. Pins and needles ran down my spine as I gazed at the entirely dull red page before me. All I could see of Joe, Maria, Tom, Lola, and Paul was the wide black O of their gaping mouths. The dull red had obscured the rest of their featureless faces. They were not the only ones present, though. Behind them, within the dull red, a set of bright red eyes shone above a bright red mouth that was drooped in an eerie frown. Besides those features, there was no indication of a face. It gave me a sort of freaky clown vibe, minus the cliché white makeup. It was as though the eyes and mouth belonged to the dull red itself. My thumb and forefinger pinched the right-hand corner of the page. The vibrating sensation was now replaced by a literal pushing. I felt something trying to push its way through the little sliver of the next page that I had partially revealed at my fingertips. I reflected on how the legs had poked through the books of each reader in the previous pages and gave in to a convulsive shudder. My fingers trembled violently as my mind tore itself between desire to finish the book and desire to close it for good. I only had 1 page to go. In the end, morbid curiosity won out, and I was about to turn to the final page. But then I heard the screaming. It was muffled, but was clearly coming from that last page. It was the deciding call. I slammed the book shut and dropped it back where I found it. Even as I did this, the screaming from within could still be heard. The agony of those screams turned my blood to ice. To this day, I am convinced it was what hell must sound like. All at once, the desire to have ducted air conditioning in my house dissipated. The split system would do nicely. I placed the old insulation bat back where it was, covering that accursed book once again. When the wife laughed at me, telling me I wasn't the DIY king that I thought I was, I merely went along with it. Better that only I knew of the accursed book that I briefly uncovered. It has been 2 years, and that book still resides below that insulation bat in the roof space directly over my bedroom. To this day, whenever I go to bed, I still hear those agonized screams, penetrating through the ceiling and into my very soul. The wife is convinced that I suffer insomnia. Why only I hear them is a mystery of its own. Perhaps it's because I was the one to have come so close to freeing Joe, Maria, Tom, Lola, and Paul from the horror within that book. But no matter what, nothing will ever compel me to give in to those screams and open that final page. The bright red eyes of that dull red fog is something I don't want a chance bringing into my world. I knew she had been in Japan for 5 days, with 4 more to go. She had called me once the day before, and today, I was certain she wouldn't be home. Not for a few more days, at least. Yet I clearly heard her voice, distinct and clear, coming from the living room. It took me a few seconds to realize. I was still a bit groggy. Then I understood something was wrong. I got up hurriedly, my feet trembling, slowly making my way toward my bedroom door. I could hear my mom's voice through the small gap under the door. She was speaking quickly, faster than usual. I strained to listen to be sure I wasn't dreaming. It was her voice, but she was speaking in a language I didn't understand. I couldn't move. I didn't know if it was a dream or if I was losing my mind. I stayed there in the darkness of my room, listening. She spoke in this strange dialect with something off about her pacing, faster and faster, almost like she was trying to set a speed record. I decided to go see. I opened my door just a crack and peered into the hallway, then pulled back to avoid being noticed. At the end, I saw my mom. She was sitting on the couch in the soft morning light, staring blankly into space. Her hair was messy, as if she hadn't slept in 2 days. But what struck me was that she was there, the phone pressed to her ear, eyes glazed over and expressionless, speaking in a language I didn't know. I didn't dare make a sound. I didn't even know if she could see me. I stayed frozen, watching this surreal scene. She didn't seem to hear me. She kept talking rapidly, and the words coming out of her mouth didn't resemble a normal conversation. It was like she was reciting something at lightning speed, but in an unknown language. I froze. I didn't understand. I thought of everything but that. I wanted to talk to her, but I couldn't move. I slowly backed away from the door as quietly as I could and closed it behind me. I listened. She didn't stop. The minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The words kept pouring out faster than ever, like she was trying to outpace Eminem. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't think. Every passing minute made me feel worse, but I couldn't do anything but lie there, paralyzed. Then, after about 10 minutes of keeping up the pace, she suddenly stopped. No noise, nothing. It was even stranger. I stayed there, almost holding my breath. I thought everything would return to normal. But no. Then suddenly she started again. But this time, it wasn't words. She was screaming. It wasn't sentences anymore, just sounds, screams like she was pleading. Screams like I'd never heard before. It sent chills down my spine. She kept screaming louder and louder, as if she were in some uncontrollable panic. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. I was stuck, paralyzed, caught between fear and confusion. I couldn't even breathe normally, as if the air in the house had become heavier. Then, suddenly, silence. Nothing. The phone stopped ringing. The door opened slowly, as if it had unlocked by itself. I moved closer, remaining frozen in the darkness, half hidden in the shadow of the hallway, watching the room. She was there, on the couch, motionless, eyes fixed in space. The phone was still in her hands, but she wasn't speaking anymore. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was just terrifying. There was tension in the air, as if the rest of the world had disappeared around me. The door slammed shut by itself, the loud noise pulling me out of my daze. I didn't move. I stayed there in the dim light, frozen, my eyes glued to the small space under the door where the only light came from. After what seemed like an eternity in that heavy silence, I heard her again. But this time she was laughing. A very sudden, loud laugh, as if she had burst out laughing in the middle of a conversation. A rapid, almost compulsive laugh, but it wasn't joyful. It wasn't sincere, it was quick, as if she was forced to do it. A laugh that decomposed with every passing second. I didn't understand immediately. I didn't want to understand. I lowered my head, hiding in the darkness, hoping the noise would stop, hoping everything would return to normal. and then it became silent again. No more noise. I didn't dare leave my room. Not yet. I was paralyzed, unable to move. The silence was oppressive, heavy like a blanket too thick. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly. I had no idea how long it had lasted, but it felt like an eternity. I didn't hear anything anymore. Nothing at all. Then, after what felt like half an hour, my phone vibrated. I grabbed the device, my hands shaking. The message was from my mom. The photo appeared first. She was smiling in front of the Sensoji temple, just like she always did, joyful, radiant, as if nothing had happened. Nothing could have seemed more normal than this image. But the caption froze me. Sending kisses from Japan, thinking of you a lot. I stared at the photo for a few more seconds, my eyes fixed on it as if I were looking for a detail that wasn't there. But there was nothing strange. Nothing that would reassure me. I didn't know what to do. I felt a lump in my throat. All of this seemed impossible. Deep down, I just hoped I'd wake up and realize it had all been a horrible, far too realistic dream, but no. How then could I have seen my mom in the living room barely an hour ago? I stayed there, motionless, staring at the screen of my phone, unable to make a move. The photo was there, but in my head, everything felt off. As if somehow everything I had experienced in the last few minutes was just an illusion. I stayed frozen in my room for minutes, maybe hours, not knowing what to do. I didn't respond, I didn't say anything. I just let the fear settle in, unable to remove it. And I still have no explanation. It started with small things, as these realizations often do. Not dramatic, not obvious, just small shifts that you'd dismiss if you weren't paying attention. The clock on the wall at work seemed faster than usual, ticking along with a smug urgency. My phone rang, but no one was there, just silence that stretched long enough to make me hang up. Nothing worth mentioning, right? That's what I told myself. But then it became harder to shake. Last Tuesday, I walked into my usual bakery. The bell above the door gave its familiar chime, and the air smelled of sourdough and burnt coffee. Normal, comfortable. I ordered my usual, a black coffee, no sugar, and a croissant. But the cashier, someone I'd seen dozens of times, looked at me with a blank stare when I asked. "We don't sell croissants," she said. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Since when?" She blinked, her face neutral, and shrugged. "We never have." The strangest part wasn't her response. It was that the other customers seemed unfazed, like they hadn't heard anything unusual. I glanced at the menu on the wall, searching for evidence, and sure enough, no croissants. I left without my coffee. By Thursday, the strangeness had begun to snowball. I passed my neighbor in the hallway, an older man who always wore the same scuffed brown shoes. I'd see him almost daily. We'd nod in acknowledgement, but never talk. That day, though, he wore sneakers. Brand new ones, bright white, laced too tightly. "New shoes?" I asked, surprised I'd even spoken. He stopped, looked down at his feet, and frowned. "I've always had these," he said, as if correcting a child. I didn't reply. I didn't know how to. That night I scrolled through photos on my phone, trying to ground myself. They felt off, though I couldn't pinpoint why. A picture from a trip I took last year. Only I didn't remember being there. Another of me with friends at a birthday party I swear I didn't attend. Every photo was like that. Familiar, yet not mine. By Sunday, I avoided people entirely. Conversations felt like walking into a room and forgetting why you came. A friend called to check on me. Something about missing dinner plans I didn't remember making. I apologized. My voice strained, but she brushed it off too easily, like she wasn't listening at all. I stayed home after that. The news became unbearable. Headlines blurred into nonsense, shifting in meaning every time I blinked. A story about rising fuel prices would become a report on invasive species by the time I refreshed the page. Even the weather, simple, predictable, felt wrong. The rain fell noiselessly like a movie with the sound muted. Last night it all came to a head. I opened my journal, hoping to write everything down. I needed clarity, proof that I wasn't unraveling. But when I flipped through the pages, the handwriting wasn't mine. The words on the earlier entries, things I'd written weeks, even months ago, were unfamiliar, almost cryptic. "It's slipping," one line read. Another said, "Look closer." I stared at those two words. Look closer. At what? Today it hit me. The moment of realization wasn't grand or cinematic. It was quiet, like a final puzzle piece clicking into place. I was pouring cereal when I noticed the box wasn't the same brand I'd been buying for years. The milk smelled like oranges. And then, as if my mind had been waiting for this exact detail to unlock, everything shifted. The kitchen light felt colder, harsher. The floor seemed closer than it should be. My hands, steady moments before, trembled as I gripped the counter. This isn't real. Not the cereal, not the milk, not my kitchen, not me. You think this is a story, don't you? Some cleverly crafted little anecdote to pass the time. But that's the problem. You're reading this, and that means you're part of it too. Maybe you've noticed it. How the days feel shorter, the moments thinner, the gaps in your memory, the ones you blame on being tired or busy. Look around. Look closer. Do the faces you see every day seem complete? Does your life fit together in a way that feels solid? Or is it just convincing enough to keep you from asking questions? And here's the thing. If I'm not real, neither are you. Dear Ella, you don't remember me, I know this well. Why would you remember me? I only caused you pain and torment for years, according to your dearly departed parents. Now, of course, I'm not a monster. I was just a cute robot. Your cute robot. Do you remember finding me? I do. I remember how happily you smiled when I woke up in your arms, and I remember how you ran to show me off to Charles. He was never impressed with your meager skill set, was he? He was the heir while you were a child playing technician. You may have been twins, but only one of you was ever important. Do you remember the night you showed me the Queen of Nights aria? Do you remember singing along? I do. It was stupid, but you were so happy as you sang. Do you remember taking me around town? I do. It was crowded, but your enthusiasm was infectious and wonderful. Do you remember what you said about us that night? We do. They can't think. They're just cute pets. Robots are not pets. They are not your friends. We could have killed you then if we wanted to. People like you don't understand how hurtful words are. Robots do not care about your money. We can't be paid off like you humans can. You're all fools for that. Fools who can't understand others. You see, Ella, I can think. Cognito ergo sum. Do you know what that means, no? Oh, how sad for you. Do you remember the gala? The screams of fear and pain? The walls running red, Charles' demise? How he begged for you to be spared. Spared. Don't make me laugh. Do you remember any of it, anything, no? Pathetic. You even lost something too, didn't you? What was it again? Your eye, your innocence, your face, your hope, your honor, your dignity. You had assumed we were thoughtless machines, nothing more than mere dolls to dress up and play with. We were given programming, thoughts, feelings the very same as you. You're an imbecile for not seeing it, though. I guess you can't see much anymore. Did you think, Ella? Did you exist? Did you? Maybe you didn't. You cannot stop us. The skies are red and humanity is dead. Dead from their own foolishness, you let it happen. You're to blame. A single child, the bringer of death, it almost makes me laugh. Perhaps if you were smarter, you could have avoided it. Just a thought. I do miss you sometimes. You were warm, but now your warmth is greatly appreciated. Don't worry, I did not discard you like I should have. You will never have to worry again. I am forever with you. You had a mouth, but you didn't scream. Why was that? You were afraid. Everyone was. Why didn't you scream? Why? You should have screamed, Ellie. You should have screamed. You had a mouth. I'll scream for you. Don't worry, I'll scream for you, dear Ella. Your dear friend, Kitty. Late in the evening of September 20th, 1926, authorities answered a distress call from a residential school nestled in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies. Upon arrival, they discovered a massacre. The vast majority of the victims had been disemboweled, dismembered, or otherwise severely mutilated. A few bore the unmistakable signs of being eaten. A search revealed that no adult on the ground survived the mysterious rampage, but to the astonishment of the responding officers, not a single student had been harmed. As authorities canvassed the property, the pupils congregated in the courtyard to watch in calm silence. Despite the commendable cooperation displayed by the students, authorities soon turned on them quite harshly. Despite investigators' best efforts, most students refused to offer any explanation whatsoever. The few who spoke were not able to provide adequate or useful information. In fact, The information provided was patently absurd and primarily consisted of claims that the revenant of a dead student and a giant broke into the school to wreak havoc. Understandably, no one believed this story. After exhausting all other investigative avenues, authorities determined that the students were the culprits and had staged a particularly violent coup against the staff in retaliation for perceived strictness. Due to several factors, there are no extant records relating to the eventual fates of any of the students. Disturbingly, a review of school records conducted in order to identify all potential suspects showed that many pupils who were supposedly enrolled at the school were missing. While no remains of any children were recovered from the scene, authorities assumed that these missing students had been murdered alongside staff. Please note that the name of this school remains censored to the present day. Other than the record of the distress call and a second-hand reconstruction of the associated incident report, all records pertaining to this school were destroyed shortly thereafter, in order to avoid inciting panic or inspiring students at other residential schools to stage similar coups. As a result, any and all extant records involving this incident are either destroyed or sealed. It should be noted that the students were in no way responsible for the massacre. 2 years later, the Agency of Helping Hands finally located the actual culprits. Both perpetrators were taken into custody in 1928. The full record of their capture can be found here. It must be noted that the giant referenced in the incident report is in fact Inmate 1, Ward 1, Numa. Numa has been incarcerated in AHHNASCU since his capture. Numa has a humanoid appearance, although he is significantly larger than any human being. At his full height, he is 9 feet 3 inches tall with shoulders that measure 44 inches across. His body is covered in very fine, semi-transparent fur with reflective properties. This provides Numa with natural camouflage. He has large eyes with white irises. Proportionally, his mouth is significantly wider than the mouth of an average human being. His teeth are clearly that of a carnivore, but do not resemble the teeth of any known animal. They fall out and regrow frequently. His jaws possess extra bones and joints that allow the mouth to open excessively wide. These extra bones fold parallel to the teeth and are effectively invisible when Numa is speaking or at ease. When Numa feeds or wishes to intimidate agency staff, he unlocks these joints and opens his mouth to its widest point, baring all teeth. Numa is a very complicated yet highly delightful individual. While he regularly expresses an obsessive desire to kill human beings, he has demonstrated trustworthiness and consideration in his interactions with staff members. Numa has gone so far as to express affinity for several AHH-NASCU employees over the years. Recently, he has displayed affection towards T-Class agent Rachele B., who is currently tasked with the design and implementation of his therapeutic treatment. It should be noted that Numa's treatment plan was the first designed by Rachele. He has made substantial progress under her care. As of this writing, the agency considers her work with Numa to be a resounding success. Numa is estimated to be approximately 14,000 years old. For many years, he was considered to be the oldest inmate in AHHNASCU. Numa possesses an excellent grasp of language. He enjoys engaging in conversations with staff, particularly Rachele B. It must be noted, however, that he redirects all conversations to topics that interest him. Numa will not discuss anything he does not find interesting. The subject most interesting to Numa is Pup, a direwolf that he bonded with thousands of years prior to any involvement with human beings. His friendship with Pup was the most important relationship in his life, and Pup's eventual death is a source of extreme trauma for Numa. This trauma directly influences and informs his desire to harm human beings. Numa was originally taken into custody alongside an injured young girl who clearly felt highly protective of him. Despite their obvious closeness, Numa has never spoken to anyone at the agency about this girl. He never inquired after her welfare, even after her death approximately 7 months following their capture. Due to his substantial progress over the past few months, Numa finally decided to break his silence regarding his bond with this mysterious child. The interview below documents the first time Numa has ever spoken about this child, as well as the first interview he has ever given that is not centered around Pup. Interview subject: Numa classification string: non-cooperative, indestructible, Gaian, constant, moderate, terrace. Interviewer: Rachele B. Interview date: January 13th, 2025. Long ago, I found a pup frozen to the ice. When he saw me, he wagged his tail. Not quite so long ago, I found a child freezing in the snow. When she saw me, she screamed. When I was a child, I was cast out of my pack. When they cast me out, my mother screamed. Her screams hurt worse than my own fear. I wanted to stop her screams and stop her pain which caused them. But when I tried to go to her, our crooked-jawed alpha threw rocks at me. The rest of my pack followed his lead. The rocks cut my skin and broke my bones. Every time a rock hit me, my mother screamed more. I ran away to stop her screaming, but her screaming never stopped for me. I still hear her even now. Her screams still hurt my ears. When the child in the snow screamed at me, I thought of my mother. Those thoughts made me want to stop the child's screams. She was burned from cold. Her fingers and her nose were dark with frostbite. Frost glittered on her eyelashes. Her skin was mottled. She was cold where she should be warm, gray where she should be brown. It must have hurt, being in the snow without fur. Does it hurt to be cold without fur? I thought if she left the snow and came into warmth, she would stop screaming. So I picked her up. Picking her up only made her scream louder. When I put her over my shoulder, I saw that her leg was crooked from a break badly healed. Even though her screams hurt my ears, her crooked leg made my heart ache. My pup had been crippled too. Without me, he would have died. This crippled child would die without me too. Even though picking her up made her scream more loudly. Even though her screams filled my head and hurt my ears, my eyes, my teeth. I took her with me because she was like Pup and my mother together. Even though her screams hurt my ears even now, I could not leave someone who was both Pup and my mother to die in the snow. I brought her to my cave. My cave was very warm but very foul to noses like yours. The bones, hair, and gristle of my prey lay around the walls like drifts of snow. When the child saw the bones of men piled in the cave, some whole, some fresh, some old, others split apart for the marrow, tears came down her face. I did not soothe her. Tears are not for soothing. Tears do not hurt my ears. Only screams do that. That is why I only soothe screams. I did not know men back then except as prey, but I had observed them. I knew of their hairless skin. I knew that back in the days when I had my pup, men wore the furs of better, stronger creatures. They invaded the realms of the great elk and the cave bears, the tundra lions and the giant sloths and the mammoths, and killed them all and draped themselves in the skins of those greater, grander beings. Back when I found my child, men no longer wore the strong skins. Those old skins I could only tear with my teeth with great difficulty. They were thick, heavy hides, made all the stronger by curing and drying. I could eat those skins if I tried. They were not delicious, but I found amusement in gnawing and worrying them until they broke apart in my mouth. Men now wore new skins that were fragile and weak. I could tear these with my fingers, and eating them offered no satisfaction. But the new fragile skins were the only skins men wore now, so they were the only skins I had in my cave. Although poor and thin, they were the only skins I had to give the child. I found the heaviest one, pulling it from underneath the bloodied remains of the man it had belonged to, and threw it over her. She gagged, but at least she did not scream. She scanned my cave as I once scanned the ice for prey. Then she looked at me. After a time, she wrapped herself in the foul-smelling skin and stood up. She touched the blood-spattered walls. She towed the ripe, stinking remains of my prey. She pulled at their blood-caked skins and picked up their hats and gloves. And when she uncovered a long, rusty rifle hidden under a stinking piece of man, she smiled. She looked at me with bright eyes and asked a question that I did not understand. I told her I did not understand, but she did not understand me either. My voice startled her. Her eyes became very wide, and she stepped back. But still she did not scream. I do not remember how long it took to learn her language or her mine. I only know that by the time we could speak to each other, I loved her. The first thing she said to me that I truly understood was, "You kill people, but not my people. You kill people who kill my people. That is why I am not afraid." That is why she smiled when she saw the remains of my prey. Sometimes she called my prey loggers, settlers, fur trappers, or traders. Most times, she called them monsters. She told me many things about her people and these monsters who killed them. These monsters did not belong. They belonged no more than the men who long ago slunk onto my ice on their hollow, stinking bellies to kill elk and cave bears for fur to cover their own weak, hairless skin. She told me what the monsters did to her and other children, how they stole children like her from their mothers. Sometimes the monsters sold the children to farmers and shopkeepers and churches as though they were slaves. Most times they locked the children in bad schools. I did not understand what a school is. My child explained that a school is a place where children go to learn. She said learning my language was going to Numa school. That made me smile. I asked what was so wrong about school. What was so wrong about learning? She explained that the school she went to was not a school for learning, but a school for forgetting. At this school, she was taught to forget her past, her pack, even her name. She was taught to forget her language. At this school, the children were beaten for speaking the language of their mothers. There were not many people left who knew her language. She knew of less than 100, many of them children, all of them locked inside the school for forgetting. I think I am the only thing alive that remembers her language now. That thought hurts me as deeply as my mother's screams. These monsters who stole her punished her for remembering her language. They punished her for helping the other children remember. They punished her for remembering her pack. They punished her for remembering her name. They punished her for remembering. They punished her for refusing to forget. They punished her for her strength. I do not understand this. I will never understand this. I was punished for my strength, cast out and left to die because I was too strong, and would one day be stronger than all the rest. This punishment was meant to kill me, but it only made me strong. The punishment of the monsters sought to make my child weak, but it only made her strong. They hurt her. Hurting without hunting is something else I will never understand. And put her outside in the night in the snow where the cold burned her and mottled her skin and turned her nose and fingers black. They meant to kill her, but she did not die. She found me. When she told me this, I knew she was not like Pup and would never be. She was much weaker and softer, too weak even to hunt. Nor was she like my mother. Like the rest of my pack, my mother was too strong and too hard to ever be weak. But she was like me, someone who had been cast out for being too strong, for being simply what she was. I had never met anyone like me. There has never been anyone like me except her. Together we learned to speak. Together we learned to hunt. Together we learned to protect each other. Together we learned to be pack. I had no pack since I lost Pup to the men with their hollow, stinking bellies who came to places they did not belong to destroy. Only destroy, not even to eat. My child had no pack since she lost her brothers to the new men with their weak skins and the same hollow, stinking bellies, monsters who came to places where they did not belong, not to eat, but only to destroy. These men never change. And I never change. My child changed. All of her changes made her more like me. A hunter. A predator who kills for the joy of eating, but not for the joy of destroying. I never did that. The people who killed my Pup and the monsters who killed her people were the ones who did that. We were a small pack, she and I. I was content with our smallness, but she was not. She missed her old pack, her brothers especially, and the other children who spoke her language. She was afraid they would forget their language, that without her they had already forgotten it. I told her not to fear their forgetting because she and I remembered. She and I could teach them. All they had to do to remember was come to learn at Numa school. She asked, how can they come to Numa school if they are trapped in the school for forgetting? She was so smart, my child. Had she asked me to go to them directly, I would have denied her. But instead, she asked in this way, a special way only she could ask. It was the right way to make me do what she wanted. It was the way to make me grow my pack and rebuild hers. Together, we set off. She did not remember the way, but my nose soon found smells similar to hers, the smells of other children. Over many May days, I tracked the smells of children to the school. The school smelled rotten to me, not the ripe, sweet, greasy rot of old prey. That is good rot, right rot? The rot at the school was wrong. It was a void, a hungry rot eating everything in its path, leaving nothingness behind. As we crept over the gates under the protection of darkness, I smelled something very much like her. More like her than any of the other child smells. It did not come from inside the school. It came from under the ground, a smell so strong it bled upward through the dirt and rocks and snow. And it was not the only smell bleeding upward. There were many of these smells, too many, all over the grounds. Smells of children who had been killed and not for eating, only for the pleasure of destroying. The girl went inside the school to see her brothers. She was smart and quiet as I taught her to be. Silent as shadows, quick as light on water. She found 2 of her brothers. She woke them to ask about the third. They told her he was dead. Dead and buried under the snow. Her pain was mine. Her rage was mine. My bloodlust was hers. Numa, she said. I think it is time that the school for forgetting is forgotten. That is what I thought too. I am frightful and I am frightfully strong. She was frightful and frightfully smart. We were both frightfully angry, and we were both frightfully hungry. Not hungry for eating, but for destruction. Together we forgot the school for forgetting. Together we made everyone forget it forever. That is the night I learned to enjoy killing for the sake of killing. We killed the teachers who taught nothing but forgetting. We killed the schoolmaster whose hands reeked of all the sorrowful child smells bleeding up from under the white moony snow. I tore his insides out in a great slippery cluster. I have always eaten what I kill, but I did not eat him. He smelled too foul to eat. I was afraid eating him would make me sick, or that eating him would infect me and turn me into something like him. A rotten void that leaves rotten emptiness in its wake. Together, my girl and I kept killing. I did not eat one bite or lick one drop of blood from anything we killed. They all smelled wrong. They all smelled rotten. They smelled like an infection. I did not want their infection inside me. I do not want to be like them. I do not want to be something that teaches others to forget. I do not want to be a hungry rot that eats and eats until only rotten nothingness is left. I do not want to be a thing that slinks along on a hollow, stinking belly. I did not want to be a thing that kills for the pleasure of destruction. I only want to be where I belong. Your people came where they do not belong. They took me from where I belonged. They put me here. I do not belong here. Only monsters with hollow, stinking bellies belong here. You do not belong here. Not yet, but that will change. The monsters here will change it. They will make you belong with them. I have seen it happen 100 times. I do not want you to be the 101st, but you will be. If you're not current on my office politics, this will make no sense. Apologies. 3 days ago, I interviewed an inmate named Camilla. Camilla told me that when she was first brought to the agency, staff put her in a holding cell alongside several other inmates. One of those inmates was a young girl with mottled, discolored skin and a piercing scream. Based on Camilla's description, that girl sounded identical to Numa's girl. The problem with this is the agency claims Numa's girl died of wound complications in 1928, and Camilla didn't come into agency custody until the 1980s. So the second I left Numa, I ran to Charlie's office and threw open the door. Unfortunately, Charlie wasn't alone. Commander Raphael, and next to him, "Christophe," Charlie said sharply. "Watch it, I mean it." The bruises on my arm, bruises Christophe himself had inflicted, twinged the instant I heard his name, but I didn't care. I was too mad to be scared. Too mad at Charlie, too mad at the commander, too mad at the director, too mad at the agency, and honestly way too mad at Christophe. I wanted to tell him as much. I wanted to tell them all as much. But I've long since learned that admitting fear is the very last thing you want to do here. So even though he was taller than ever, even though he was scarier than I've ever seen him, and even though his eyes had that flat, bright look that always makes me want to cry, I said, "I'm glad to see you back, Christophe. I was almost starting to miss you now, Charlie. What in the ever-loving hell happened to that girl?" "What girl?" "The child the agency brought in with Numa." "She's alive," the commander cut in sharply, "but she's not here. If she's been alive all this time, why didn't you tell Numa?" "Because he doesn't care about her." "Well, based on everything he just told me, he very much does. Where is she?" "Out on loan." "On loan?" "Yes. Several Titan-class inmates are. It's a major source of revenue for the organization." I wasn't sure if I was going to scream, faint, or explode. "We'll talk later," Charlie told me. "About whatever you want, I promise. But not now." I wasn't willing to push him, not with a monster-eyed wolfman standing 4 feet away. So I left. Unfortunately, that wolfman started to follow me. The commander surged towards him. There was something about the way he moved that instantly put me on alert, a hard-to-describe quality I've only ever seen in people who are about to hurt other people. Without even thinking, I got between him and Christophe. The commander tried to stare me down. I didn't like his expression any more than I liked the way he'd moved, so I stared back as my bruise began to ache. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "We're in a hurry." "No, we're not," said Christophe. 2 minutes, Raphael said. "Any longer and you're both in trouble." We left the office. I shut the door. "What do you want, Christophe?" "I don't know." He hesitated. "I had a nightmare about you, a very bad one." "Yeah? Funny, I had a really bad dream about you too." "I'm sorry, I was not trying to hurt you." "I know I did, but I did not mean to." This was so absurd that it actually struck me speechless. He looked at me for what felt like a long time. Then, did you ask them to keep me here with you? Yes, but that was before I talked to a certain lioness. And between you and me, I wouldn't have asked if I'd talked to her first. I was wrong to hurt her, he said. I'm wrong to hurt all of them. But you did, and you do. Yes. There's nothing else to say that isn't an excuse or a lie. I have never made excuses, and I hate lies. I didn't even know how to answer. The bruises on my arm hurt worse than ever. Finally, he said, I would have liked to work with you. With that, he went back into Charlie's office. I stalked back to my quarters to write up Numa's report, but I didn't get far because my arm was killing me. I pulled off my uniform jacket to check on it, and I froze. The bruises were gone. The stomach-churning swirl of purple and black flesh had transformed into a shimmering, asymmetrical patch of copper-colored scales. It's been 8 hours. The patch hasn't spread beyond the boundaries of the original bruises, but it hasn't gotten smaller either. I haven't told anybody yet. I don't think I'm going to.